This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate sixth and final part of What If Naruto Became God of Wind. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Now, wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Sanagakure. Council meeting room. When Naruto entered the room, the entire assembly was filled with shock and amazement. Kurenai was astounded that her pupil could leave such a lasting impression on a room full of seasoned fighters. Some of Suna's finest, no less. This further demonstrated to her that Konoha still needed to go far in giving Naruto credit for everything he had done for the village. No matter how hard he tries to protect them, she knew that there would always be people among Konoha's elite who fear him and cannot trust him. The fact that Konan was escorting Naruto became problematic as soon as his group entered the meeting room. She was someone they could definitely recognize as an Akatsuki agent because she had taken part in the raid not too long ago that was intended to kidnap their Kazekage. They still viewed the Angel of Aim as a threat that needs to be neutralized right away, even though she was no longer wearing the well-known black cloak with red clouds. But before things got out of control, Naruto intervened and made an effort to defuse the situation by doing something he knew would be respected. Kazekage. Dono, Tsuchikage. Dono and honorable council members of Sanagakure, I, Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto hereby present myself in front of you, as the Shinobi Alliance's Su Taicho. Escorting me, is Yuhi Kurenai, my former sensei and Konoha's Genjutsu mistress. Also with me is Konan, honorary member of my clan and formerly known as the Angel of Omegakure. I mean no disrespect, but there are things of great importance that I need to discuss privately with both the Kazekage and Tsuchikage. Naruto said, making sure everyone knew under his watch. When he used his position as the Alliance's leader, he eliminated any possibility of disagreement because everyone knew that his decisions about matters pertaining to Akatsuki could only be overturned by the vote of 3 cages. After the blonde made his request known, no one was stupid enough to challenge Naruto. Each of them looked up at Gaara or Kuretsuchi, requesting guidance. While no one wished to cross the K's no Kami, they also did not wish to abandon their leaders. Gaara glanced at Kuretsuchi, and the two of them nodded, indicating that everyone in the room should leave. As Tamari and Kankuro were leaving the conference room, Naruto said, actually, I would like for your brother and sister to remain with us, as they also fought against our enemies in the past. Very well, John and Tamari and Kankuro shall stay for the remaining of this meeting, Gaara responded. Naruto sighed deeply and went to take a seat after everyone had left the room. Konan and Kurenai joined him, while Tamari and Kankuro returned to their seats close to Gaara. Naruto forced Kuretsuchi's escort out of the room, leaving her alone. Naruto appeared to be more at ease than he had been earlier, judging by the lack of honorifics he used to refer to the Kazekage and Tsuchikage. Sorry about all this, but the kind of things we're about to discuss can only be shared with those I fully trust. No offense for your people Gaara, or your escort Kuretsuchi, but you were the only people in the room that had my trust. That's alright, Naruto, even I can't be sure of everyone's loyalty nowadays. After what happened the first time Akatsuki attacked, I know we can't be too sure about those things. As far as Akatsuki is concerned. Gaara replied with a grin. He's right, you know. That masked man from Akatsuki could make Gigi do things he would have never even considered doing if he had all his mind. We can never be too cautious these days, and I perfectly understand the need for discretion. Kuretsuchi continued. Well, I really don't know how you guys do it all the time, but I'm still not used to ordering people around like this. Anyway, this isn't a social call. Things have gone from bad to worse since our last encounter. Naruto replied. Naruto also made the decision to bring up the question of the identity of the man hiding behind the masked Akatsuki member before anyone else could say anything more. They were shocked to discover that the Uchiha founder would be the one hiding behind that mask and that Uchiha Madara might still be alive after all this time. Well, as we were saying before you arrived, we are completely surrounded by Otogakure and its allies. We still managed to keep contact with Iwagakure, thanks to a coordinated assault from our forces in Stone Country. Had we not reacted immediately like we did on that day, I fear that either Suna or Iwa would have already been defeated, Gaara stated. We had no way of contacting you guys on the other side. I'm positive that they intercepted every messenger bird we've already sent. Our borders are now secured and we may be able to hold them back should they decide to attack, but I'm not quite sure of what their true intentions are. From the reports I have from our outposts, ever since they conquered River Country, all they did was fortify their borders and nothing else. We have no idea of what's going on behind their lines. Kuretsuchi continued. Pretty much the same happened on our side. Our allies from Kumo and Kiri managed to push back the enemy as they were trying to flank us by taking down Shimogakure and Yugakure. Fire Country is still the nation that shares the most borders with the enemy, That's the reason why it is currently being fortified with reinforcements troops coming from both Kumo and Kiri. Tsunade is in charge of setting up our defenses on the other side with the cooperation of A and Mei. I was given the mission to check up on you guys and then infiltrate and assess our enemy's forces. I chose Kurenai and Konan since they are both stealth experts and I trust them unconditionally, Naruto said to them. Kuretsuchi questioned, seeing many issues with Naruto's plan of infiltrating the enemy's lands. Even so, going behind the enemy's lines right now is suicidal. They're expecting you, no doubt about it. Where do you even plan to check in the first place? Their territories are now numerous and they may or may not have the local citizens' cooperation. Our target is AIM, since it is strategically placed at the crossroad of the elemental nations. It shares borders with Iwa, Suna and even Konoha. Should we need to fall back during that mission, we would then have 3 options to do so. That's also the place I would advise to march against, once everyone is ready and I've determined that it is safe to proceed. The locals have already fled the scene under Konan's orders, before Otto started their invasion, so we're not at risk of having collateral casualties when the battle starts and Konan has a perfect knowledge of that village. Freeing AIM also ensures us a safe way to travel from the east side to the west one. I'm pretty sure that River Country wouldn't last long against us, when they are isolated from the rest of the territories under Otogakure's influence. Naruto went on to explain AIM was selected as their entry point. I only see one flaw in your mission's plan, Naruto. No offense, but if you manage to deduce all this, a Megacure being a strategic position to take over and all, then I think that it is safe to assume the enemy could also know of this. While I agree with you that taking back AIM should still be a priority objective for us, you would do well to not underestimate Uchiha Sasuke or his Akatsuki allies. Gaara cautioned Naruto. I know Gaara, thanks for your concern. However, this is something that needs to be done and I'm the one with the highest chance of survival for this type of mission. I've selected Kurenai and Konan because I knew it would increase the chance of success for this mission to have them with me. Naruto replied with a grin. Even so, we cannot allow you to take all the risks, Alliance's leader or not. You won't be able to flash your way into AIM since you have no beacon in there, so taking Kurenai and Konan for their stealth ability and knowledge of the city to get in there the old-fashioned way was a good call. However, I know of a perfect way to increase the odds of success for your mission, Kuretsuchi said. Naruto grinned and replied, oh, and what do you have in mind, Tsuchikage? Dono. The Rock Princess said, we will stage a fake assault against Otogakure's lines at these 2 points. She gestured to 2 locations on the map that was in the middle of the room. She mentioned 2 locations, Tanigakure in the south and Takigakure in the north. I approve of this plan. This will force them to split their forces to avoid losing those villages. With those 2 diversions, your group should be able to sneak in easier. I'm sure Uchiha Sasuke will take the bait. He may even choose to lead one of the 2 groups that will go to defend their positions. Gaara stated from his position. Naruto stood up and performed a familiar set of hand signals before saying, okay fine, this could work but do not take any unnecessary risk with those 2 fake attacks of yours. Anyway, now that we made sure that you're both fine, we will proceed with the second part of our mission. He exclaimed, Ninpo, Kachiyose no Jutsu, as a little dragon emerged. Keep this little one with you. He won't be easily intercepted by our enemies, so you can relay anything you want to Tsunade on the other side with him. Just make sure to also let her know that we finished the fist part of the assignment. Naruto told them as he gave Gaara her dragon summoning. The blonde then approached Kuretsuchi and gave the brunette a Hiraishin Kunai after carefully removing it from his vest. I only used a temporary seal on you the last time we met, when I needed to use the Hiraishin before that Akatsuki member could reach you. Please accept this, as a sign of friendship between us. I trust that you will use it wisely, should you need my help at any time in the future, he stated as she accepted the kunai. Thank you Naruto, I'll make sure to keep it safe so that it never falls into the wrong hands. It's a funny thing you know, I would have never believed it if someone had told me a year ago that I'd be standing in front of the Yondaime Hokage's son, and that he'd be willingly give me one of the famed Hiraishin kunai. Kuretsuchi grinned. Gaara stood up and joined them, looking at the map and considering the best course of action. Okay, the diversion attacks will take place in 2 days, that leaves you some time before you have to infiltrate a Megacure. A Megacure. The interdiction zone inside a cramped space with scant to no light, Sasuke and Zetsu were gazing at Danzo's lifeless form. The root leader was clearly unconscious, strapped to a tiny bed, and had numerous tubes inserted into his body. Gradually, Sasuke extended his hand to remove the bandages covering his eyes. Zetsu briefly saw the young Uchiha's eyes closed, but as he opened them, he saw an advanced form of the Mangekyo Sharingan flashing before his eyes. Zetsu observed Sasuke approaching Danzo's bed, unfazed by his words, and remarked, "I see, so that's where you got those new eyes of yours. I was pretty sure you'd take Itachi's eyes, but I guess I was wrong. He gave me more than those eyes, thanks to Kabuto's truth serum. I've noted in here everything he knew about Konoha and the secret tunnels he took to get outside the village, undetected by their sensory barrier. I need you to infiltrate the leaf and give me more information about their plans and that annoying Jinchuriki of theirs," Sasuke said to Zetsu as he gave him. "Well, Madara did ask me to assist you, so I guess I'll do it. I hope that those tunnels of yours do exist though, wouldn't want to face their K's no Kami if your plan fails," Zetsu replied as he took the folder. If Sasuke was annoyed by Itachi's name any longer, he was annoyed by the mention of Naruto's moniker. He was eager to confront the blonde with his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan once more. Not even Itachi could resist that special drug from Kabuto. "You don't need to question my plan or those information. They are solid, so you have no excuse for failing this mission. Now leave me, you are dismissed," Sasuke yelled at him. Zetsu then departed without saying anything more, and Sasuke made the decision to return to the Cage Tower, also known as God's Tower before, a moniker he felt was appropriate for him. The Tower of God. When he returned to the tower, Suigetsu and several other Jonin were waiting for him in front of his office. Suigetsu was relieved and intrigued to see him at last free of the bandages, but he decided to postpone his inquiries about it until later because they needed to talk about more urgent issues. The silver-haired swordsman said, "Sasuke, these are the Jonin who will infiltrate the villages you mentioned in our previous meeting." Sasuke was genuinely shocked that Suigetsu had obtained so many spies so quickly. They were all dressed normally, with no headgear designating their individual hometowns. He was aware that a large number of them were from the nations he had invaded in the previous month, casting doubt on their allegiance to him. If Otto's people weren't so terrified of him and his elite staff, they would betray him without hesitation. He glanced at those men and a thought flashed through his mind, followed by a smirk as he addressed them. "As soon as possible, Suigetsu, gather them in the meeting room," Sasuke said as he went into his office. Conference space. When Sasuke arrived at the conference room, they noticed that he had changed from his battle gear, which featured the Uchiha crest on his back, to cage attire. His eyes were hidden by his hat, and he wore purple clothing. Suigetsu was waiting to the side as the other men stood erect in front of him. Subsequently, Sasuke gradually took off the hat, unveiling his Sharingan in its eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, A.N. will be referred to as M's going forward, configuration. As Suigetsu approached Sasuke to stand by his side, he said, "Suigetsu, come to my side for a moment." Sasuke began to gather more chakra to his eyes once Suigetsu had left his line of sight before continuing. "You are now soldiers of Otogakure. Your only purpose in life is to serve your village and its leader, the Otokage, Uchiha Sasuke. You will obey any orders I give you without concern. Your former lives are now over. You belong to the Uchiha clan from now on. Do you understand me?" Sasuke demanded. Suddenly, every man in the room bowed and kneeled in front of him. "Hi, Uchiha Sama," they yelled simultaneously. "Amazing. How did you train them to be so submissive?" A bewildered Suigetsu questioned Sasuke, who was suddenly relieved that the dark-haired man had told him to move aside before unleashing whatever jutsu he had just used. Sasuke cryptically replied, recalling his most recent conversation with Danzo when the drug was causing the elderly war hawk to divulge all of his dark secrets. "It's just a simple ability from those new eyes I got from an old man." This helped him realize that he only had one of the Elder Council members responsible for the massacre of his clan. The other members were still at large, and Konoha would be his top priority after them. Sasuke turned around and headed back towards his office, saying, "Now that I know where their true allegiance lies, resume your mission and send them on their way to their respective targets." Amegakure and Sanagakure deserts are adjacent. 2 days had passed since Naruto and Gaara and Kuretsuchi met in Sanagakure. As planned, Kurenai and Konan, Naruto's escort, were making their way toward Amegakure's boundaries. To avoid being discovered, the group was concealed behind one of Kurenai's genjutsu. Kurenai was in the center of the group, Naruto was covering Kurenai's back, and Konan was leading the group because she knew the route to her old house. Naruto couldn't help but smile as he observed the two kunoichi, recalling their conversation from shortly before they departed Sanagakure. They had to wait for Gaara and Kuretsuchi to send out their troops for the diversion attacks immediately following the meeting. Konan had made the decision to spend their brief break buying new kunoichi clothes since she was out of clothes from Akatsuki. After learning of her plan, Naruto offered to create some specially made gear for her, similar to the one he was wearing. He was used to making and fixing his own things, so it didn't take him long at all. The only difficult aspect was the seals he was putting in the clothing, such as storage or gravity seals. Kurenai requested that Naruto make another set of clothes for her because Konan looked so amazing in them. With their matching outfits, the three appeared to be members of an elite unit once they were finished and fully outfitted. Imagine the clothes Orihime was wearing when Aizen abducted her in Hueco Mundo. Returning to the mission, Naruto was still trailing the two women when Konan abruptly stopped in her path and raised her right hand in a fist, giving them a silent cue to halt their progress as well. Konan said, barely whispering to her teammates, "From now on we're crossing inside a Megacure's lands. Reduce your chakra output to the limit and stay focused at all times." Naruto nodded as Kurenai pulled out a soldier's pill and swallowed it, attempting to use the concealment jutsu she had been using to hide their whereabouts since the mission's beginning to restore the chakra she had lost. Naruto and Kurenai followed Konan as they took off again. To get to the city, it would normally take us about 1 hour, but since we want to avoid detection in the patrols, we will have to take a small detour, extending the trip for another 2 hours to reach our destination. Konan continued. As promised, Naruto sensed the presence of multiple ninja patrolling nearby. Not much noteworthy, though. Those patrol squads were probably made up of Chunin or Special Jonin at most, if not higher. They continued running non-stop for 2 more hours before reaching their goal, which was located directly outside the magnificent city of Omegacure. Actually, it hadn't really stopped raining since they left Wind Country's borders. It was still pouring. Naruto pulled out a Hiraishin kunai and sank it firmly into the ground before entering. He gave the two women a comforting smile and said, "Just a precaution, if we need to get the hell out of there, should they discover us." He then pulled out 2 more of those kunai and gave them to his partners. If it comforts both them and Naruto, they accepted the gift without any trouble, believing that no harm had been done. "So how do we do this? Any idea for the best entry point in the city, Konan?" asked Kurenai. "We will have to go through the sewer of the village. That's the best way to avoid detection. The tunnels run deep under the city. I can guide us through them. They can really lead us pretty much everywhere we want to in the city, provided that the Uchiha didn't change things too much," Konan responded. "Okay, that's a solid plan, Konan. Lead the way, we'll be just right behind you," Naruto replied. The sound of the city's gates slowly opening reached them as they prepared to leave their hiding place. 2 full battalions of shinobi emerged, outfitted with Otogakure's headbands and ready for battle. Naruto sensed their chakra levels. They were all Jonin level and stronger than those they had previously encountered. Not long afterward, 1 battalion headed north and the other south. Seems like Gaara and Kuretsuchi are doing their part. Those men are most likely sent out to support their defense lines. "Everything is going as planned so far. We should move out as soon as possible too," said Kurenai. "Looks like we hit the jackpot too. Judging by the level and numbers of those men, this is most likely the new center of command for Otogakure." Naruto grinned. Naruto's group headed into the city through the sewers after the shinobi left and the gates were closed once more. Under Omegacure's feet, the smell was terrible when they first got into the sewers. To create a small air bubble for them to breathe in and filter the noxious smell permeating the entire area, Naruto had to use his wind abilities. Konan knew her way around the entire maze, indicating that she had been there before, which astounded him. He was aware that this was connected to her past and the difficult upbringing she, Nagato, and Yahiko had before coming into contact with the pervert in his group. He forced himself to refrain from probing further, as it might have been a delicate topic for her. Konan abruptly stopped facing an odd wall after making another turn. Naruto asked her, "What is it, Konan? Are we lost?" from behind. "No, we're not. It's just that I know those tunnels like the back of my hand, but this wall shouldn't be here," Konan replied with a scowl. Kurenai said aloud, "Then this means this is something new. Most likely Sasuke built it after he took command of the city." Naruto began channeling chakra to his legs so he could climb the wall, saying, "That's worth investigating then, if Duck Ass felt the need to build something new in this city that was already empty." When they got to the top, they discovered a tiny hatch that led to the building's basement. Laboratory for research, they entered what appeared to be a storage room filled with numerous boxes and medical supplies. "This is definitely a new building. Its design doesn't match what is usually done here in AIM." Konan was the first to speak. "Judging by the familiar smell, we must be in some kind of hospital," Naruto continued. Kurenai said, recalling her friend Anko and the experiments she endured while still the snake's apprentice. "Well, they do have Sakura and Kabuto in their ranks, 2 highly qualified medic ninja, so that's not so surprising they would build some kind of research center, maybe to continue some of Orochimaru's projects. Naruto gestured for them to follow him outside the room and said, "This is exactly what we've come here for, to find out what they've been hiding to us the whole time when we've been solely focusing our attention on Akatsuki." After leaving the room, Naruto resumed his speech. "Kurenai, you can drop the genjutsu on Konan and me for now. We'll split here, since we need to cover a lot of ground and there's only the three of us. You will remain here and search this place while Konan will go through the city since she knows it better than any of us. I will find what Sasuke is up to since I'm the only one with a genjutsu he can't see through, even with his Sharingan," Naruto said to his two companions. "Alright, but please be careful, Naruto. I know you are strong, but do not let it get to you. You may be an elite Jonin just like me, but I'll always see you as my student, so don't do anything crazy out there," Kurenai stated to him. Naruto grinned in response, relieved that Kurenai was concerned for him. "Copy that, Kurenai. Sensei. The same goes for you too. If you come across something you can't deal with on your own, do not hesitate to use the kunai." After giving each other a nod, the team members parted ways. Kurenai moved deeper into the research facility while wearing a cloak over her genjutsu. Konan transformed her body into innumerable fragments of paper, which she then flung from the building and all across the city. Naruto simply disappeared from his location by using his wind genjutsu field. Cage Tower Naruto was familiar with the city, having visited it once during Sasuke and Toba's attack on Konan. Since Sasuke was now the city's leader, he made the decision to investigate the Cage Tower as it was probably where he could be found. He entered the tower with ease, capitalizing on the constant flow of shinobi entering and leaving. Using his stealth, he followed a squad into the room without having to come into contact with any doors or windows. As he continued down the hall, he encountered the meeting room, and to his astonishment, the Otokage himself was present. He was sulkily seated on a throne, standing in front of about 50 Jonin who were from all the nations he had subjugated. Kabuto entered the room and stood next to Sasuke when the door abruptly closed. Sasuke's activation of his M's alerted Naruto, who noticed the change in the eye pattern right away. Naruto saw a replay of the same scene in which Sasuke used the Koto Amatsukami on the people inside the room. He observed how their behavior changed both before and after the jutsu was applied. Now, all they could be was mindless automatons, devoid of free will and obligated to serve Uchiha Sasuke, the despot. The thought of Sasuke using this jutsu against his friends made his blood boil. He also recalled the Sandaime Tsuchikage and Kuretsuchi's account of her grandfather's abrupt attitude shift. Sasuke could never have offended the elderly man, so he doubted he was the one behind it. Whatever his name is, that Tobi or Uchiha Madara was most likely the one who worked on this. The streets of Omegakure Konan was able to smuggle her paper spies throughout the city. They emitted insufficient chakra and were sufficiently small for no one to notice them. The invaders had looted every store and were now occupying the houses with soldiers. Konan went to confirm something she had not been able to see for herself until today. The grave she had constructed for Nagato and Yahiko, while her spies were scouting the city. As she had feared, Madara discovered the tomb, and he removed Nagato's corpse. Luckily, he left the former Diva Path's corpse alone because he had no interest in Yahiko. Her lovely eyes welled up with tears when she saw the monster desecrate her friend's tomb. Her reverie was broken when one of her spies discovered an odd assembly of Otogakure's shinobi. Konan walked out of the cemetery and toward the spy's location. When Konan arrived, a full battalion of shinobi was in front of a pink-haired kunoichi who was seated behind a stand in the middle of the street. They all went to the kunoichi stand to get a little glass of blue water, which they then proceeded to drink. Konan could sense the difference in power between before and after each man drank the strange water that the kunoichi were giving out, even though she wasn't a sensor ninja. In an instant, their chakra level went from Chunin to Jonin. She noticed a strange atmosphere among them, which surprised her because one would think that at least some of them would be talking among themselves. The peculiar thing was that none of them said anything. They were all quiet and took no additional action. She felt as though she was watching puppets move because their eyes were vacant. Center for research inside what appeared to be a medical or research facility, Kurenai was carrying out her spy mission as well. Thus far, she had not seen any staff members in the rooms, and they were all empty. Given her training with Tsunade, she had anticipated seeing Sakura, but thus far, she felt alone in the area. Given that Sasuke had never shown the young girl any attention when they were younger, she was aware that the only reason he was taking her with him was to benefit from her medical expertise. When something at last drew her attention, she proceeded through the building. She headed for the room where she heard the noise, not quite sure what she was listening to. She chose to look inside because, aside from the constant sound coming from inside the room, she could hear nothing else. She pulled out a kunai, opened the door slowly, and entered. Her eyes expanded upon seeing what, or rather, who, she saw in that room. Itachi, Danzo, and a small boy she didn't recognize had their bodies in a large room filled with electronic equipment. The fact that Itachi was still alive, presumably due to the numerous machines surrounding his bed, shocked her even more. She was baffled as to why Sasuke had both of them here, still alive. Kurenai moved toward the beds and began to peruse the medical charts that were attached to each one. They contained written information about what each of them had been exposed to, including the drug and its exact dosage. She discovered that there was a certain truth serum present in both cases after comparing the notes. She knew right away what was truly happening in this room, at least for Itachi and Danzo. She glanced at the third bed, trying to use his chart to learn more about the boy they also had in that room. Sadly, no name was given. All she could see and deduce was that he was being kept in an artificially induced coma. She was aware that the boy was being held against his will, but she was unsure of the reason since there had been no reports of any illnesses or injuries. Seeing that she couldn't bring Itachi or Danzo with her, not that she really wanted to save any of them, she made the choice to set the younger boy free and take him along. Sewer in the basement. Kurenai went to the entrance of the city where they had first arrived, only to discover Conan was waiting for her. It was their decision to get together there after the mission was completed. Conan questioned the Genjutsu mistress about the young boy on Kurenai's back after being taken aback to see her carrying additional luggage. Kurenai interrupted her before she could say, "I'll explain later, we have to get out of this place as soon as possible, Conan." Conan laughed and said, "Well, I have nothing against it, but we still miss one person." Then Kurenai sighed. Naruto. Conference space. The blonde was still in the conference room, quietly taking in Kabuto and Sasuke's conversation. It took everything in him not to laugh at what he was hearing. It seems that Kuretsuchi and Gaara performed their duties admirably, in Gaara's case, to the extent that the case cage was able to breach their defenses in River Country. Recalling their meeting, Naruto realized that Gaara and Kuretsuchi were supposed to command their respective armies, creating a distraction that would allow Naruto and his gang to enter AIM. Gaara seemed to spot an opening and push through, but their plan was to use hit dot and dot run attacks. They were going to lose River Country, which infuriated Sasuke. Raising himself from his throne, he made hand gestures before calling forth a snake and a hawk. "Fly to the north and deliver this to the commander of the troops there. Swim downstream and give this message to the commander of our troops in the south." He issued his two summons. The snake oddly stood back, seemingly staring into an open area of the meeting room, while the hawk quickly took off. Just as Sasuke was about to give him a hard time for disobeying his commands, he noticed the snake extending his tail in the same direction. When Naruto and Sasuke realized what was happening, their eyes grew wide. "There's someone there. Shit, I forgot to mask my heat signature. That snake can feel my presence." Sewer in the basement. Boom. A massive explosion could be heard all the way to the current location of Conan and Kurenai. Kurenai sighed and Conan remarked, "Looks like Naruto failed to mask his presence." Tower cage in a megacure. The ground shook throughout the entire village as a portion of the cage tower collapsed. When the first ninja patrols arrived on the scene, they noticed a massive hole at the base of the tower, which, given its location, must have been the meeting room. Everyone could see a massive purple flaming arm extending outside through the gaping hole. That was one of Sasuke's Sharingan techniques, the Susanoo, and it looks like that's what brought down that section of the structure. The Auto Shinobi were accustomed to seeing that jutsu because Sasuke had been utilizing it a lot lately to conquer. Without delay, Sasuke exited the tower and searched the area, using his snake summon to help him locate his opponent. Unfortunately, he could no longer track the temperature well because of the pouring rain all around them. Shinobi from Otogakure were assembling around the tower, curious about what was happening to their leader. Kabuto was standing next to Sasuke when Sakura and Suigetsu arrived. With Sasuke totally out of the picture and no one understanding the situation, Kabuto made the decision to take command. There was an intruder in the meeting room just now. He can mask his presence almost completely, but a summon creature was able to track him by his heat signature. He may have other accomplices with him. I want a full sweep of the entire city. The second in command responded. Sakura and Suigetsu stayed with Kabuto and Sasuke, while the other Auto Shinobi went to obey Kabuto's orders. Said Uchiha continued to search the area for the intruder while activating his Ms. Just as he was about to give up and head back in the direction of the cage tower, something intriguing caught his attention. There was a place in the middle of the road where the rain failed to fall all the way to the ground. The Sharingan saw the singularity when most others would have missed it. Immediately, the Otokage channeled more chakra into his eyes, and dark flames appeared all around the suspicious area. As he gradually revealed himself to Sasuke and his men, Naruto remarked, "I guess your eyes aren't that useless after all, Uchiha." He was not, however, where the Otokage had anticipated him to be. Where Sasuke had aimed his Amaterasu, there now stood the charred remnants of whatever Naruto had used to take his place. Sasuke angrily retorted, "Dobi, how dare you show yourself in front of me, inside my city no less." Naruto. Sakura uttered in terror as she recalled how resilient her former classmate truly is. Since she was aware of their status as missing nin from the leaf, she knew she wouldn't be able to defend herself against Naruto in a fight. Kabuto began to consider the various possible outcomes of this situation and thought, "This is bad, Tobi isn't here like the last time. Sasuke will want to fight him, even if he loses everything and everyone around him in the process. So your Konoha's K's no Kami, Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto. I always imagined that you'd be taller than that. Anyway, this is your title as the 8th swordsman of Kiri that interests me. Sasuke, you promised me when I joined your cause that should we encounter one of them, I'd be allowed to pursue the swordsman of Kiri," Suigetsu said as he turned towards Sasuke. Sasuke scowled back, "Fine, but don't you dare embarrass me, if you are to fight against him." Since the Uchiha heir assumed control of Otogakure, that has, in fact, been the agreement that has kept them together. Walking towards Naruto, the silver-haired Kenjutsu fighter said, "I, Hazuka Suigetsu, challenge you Uzumaki Naruto to fight me. My brother, Mangetsu, was one of the 7 before his death." He then took out the Samahata. Knowing that Sasuke was nearby to hear him, Naruto questioned, "Oh, so it was you who got Kisami's body? I always wondered who were the rats that scavenged the spoils of war. I assume Duck-ass got his brother too. Is he still alive?" But the Uchiha did nothing more than stand there and watch him get attacked. Naruto stared at Sasuke's group and the sound shinobi that had gathered around them, thinking, with all the audience around, I should probably just get the hell out of here as soon as possible. There is no way that Sasuke will simply hold back and let me fight this swordsman of his without interfering. Just as he was about to leave using the Hiraishin, he suddenly remembered Zabuza's words. He was still known as the 8th swordsman of Kiri, even though that title had no official significance at all. He had the right to accept this challenge because of his position, and it was against the younger sibling of a former member, no less. The blonde man sighed, unsealing his katana, and walked towards Suigetsu. "I just hope that Konan and Kurenai are fine." Well, they would have used the kunai if they were in trouble, so I guess that it's fine for now. Suigetsu versus Naruto. In the center of the street now stood the 2 swordsmen, Suigetsu holding the Samahata and Naruto with his Shinso. Seeing those 2 weapons that were diametrically opposed to one another was an odd sight. In contrast to Samahata, which was rugged, lengthy, and fairly large, Shinso was graceful, relatively short, and compact. I've been challenged by quite a lot of people during my shinobi career, sometimes as a shinobi of the leaf, some other times as a Jinchuriki or lately as the Alliance's leader but never as one of the swordsmen of Kirigakure. Are you doing this in order to get promoted to be one of them? Replied Naruto. Suigetsu answered, "Not at all, I'm just interested in that sword of yours." Naruto told him, "I'm ready, so you can start whenever you are." Naturally, Suigetsu was the first to move, charging at Naruto at breakneck speed in an attempt to take the blonde out with a vertical slash. After effortlessly blocking it with his own blade, Naruto attempted to harm his opponent's sword by directing wind chakra into it. Unfortunately for Naruto, the Samahata immediately drained the wind chakra from his blade as soon as he began to infuse it. He cursed as he suddenly realized that Kisami's sword had the unique ability to consume his opponent's chakra. He could feel the sword absorbing his attack. Naruto said, putting some distance between them, "You're quite strong, to be able to wield such a heavy sword despite your body structure." He would have to try something else for the time being because he determined that making direct contact with this sword was dangerous. "This is nothing for me. I trained hard to be able to wield any kind of sword. Before his death, my brother Mangetsu had mastered all the 7 swords of Kiri. There was a time when I also wished to join that group, however, my dream now is to collect all those blades and then master them as my brother once did." Suigetsu responded, as he was preparing for another against his foe. Naruto said, channeling more wind chakra throughout his body, "Okay, I guess I'm done warming up. I hope for you that you can do better than that or this won't be a very long fight." Alongside Kurenai and Konan, the 2 kunoichi remained at the rendezvous they had selected prior to entering a megacure city. Their task was to infiltrate, observe, and then report back. They had no idea why Naruto was fighting someone above the surface. Naruto should have been to escape at any moment of his choosing with the Hiraishin. Either someone found a way to prevent him from using it, or he simply chose to stay and fight whoever he is currently fighting. Conan spoke loudly about the circumstances. Kurenai said as she moved away from their position with her charge, "That blonde idiot. We don't have time for this. Conan, can you try to see what's going on up there and assist him if he needs it? I'll move out first. I must bring this boy back and none of us knows medical jutsu." Conan answered as she moved in the other direction, in the direction of the surface. "Very well, be careful on your way out. I'll leave one of my paper summon with you to guide you through the maze. Don't wait for us, I'm sure we'll be fine." Alongside Naruto, Suigetsu lunged for his place as Naruto assumed a well-known pose. With his blade aimed at his opponent, the blonde channeled wind chakra through it. When he attacked Suigetsu, Naruto cried out, "Futon! Kei's Shinso!" Suigetsu was stopped mid-run when the wind blade struck him with lethal accuracy, piercing the silver-haired swordsman just above his heart. As Naruto was ready to sheath his blade, he noticed that the wound he had caused was leaking water rather than blood. Suigetsu said as his body turned translucent and he transformed into water, "You may be known throughout the world as the wind god, but here inside the rain, I am the master of water manipulation." Naruto questioned aloud, "Mizu Bunshin?" as he witnessed his opponent transform into water. But there was something off about him. If he was a Bunshin, he ought to have dispelled or something. But the one in front of him had just suffered a fatal wound, and he still stood there, nonchalant. Suigetsu responded as his body disintegrated into a pool of water. "That's not a Bunshin. This jutsu is called Suika no Jutsu. It allows me to liquefy any part of my body, and while I'm in this state, no physical attack shall harm me. I can also do this." A sword thrust from behind nearly missed Naruto due to his superior battle instincts. In an attempt to avoid Suigetsu, he jumped back after turning around in time to escape the Samahata. This, however, proved ineffective as Suigetsu reappeared directly behind Naruto's landing spot, using the same jutsu. Seeing that he had no other option, Naruto set off multiple Hiraishin markers and promptly advanced toward them in an erratic manner in order to evade his opponent's trap. Taking advantage of the brief break he had after escaping with the Hiraishin, Naruto thought to himself, "How the hell does he move so fast? That's nowhere near the Hiraishin but still faster than my normal speed. It must be that rain that provides him with limitless water supply in order to use his water-fusing jutsu." Once more, Naruto saw his enemy advancing, so he decided to take matters into his own hands and used his true powers. He summoned a Kage Bunshin and used his customary method to enter his ultimate wind mode. "Futon! Teni Muho no Kiwami!" was the cry that emerged from Naruto's ultimate battle form. A fierce gust of wind surrounded him, forcing the surging Suigetsu and his water jutsu back. Naruto analyzed in his head and prepared a strategy to defeat Suigetsu. "This won't hold him back for long. With the rain pouring down, I'll be a sitting duck soon enough again. I don't have any lightning jutsu and my genjutsu won't work against him with the rain giving out my position so easily." Suigetsu resurfaced behind Naruto and uttered, "You can't defeat me. As long as you are an absolute wind type, nothing you do can stop me." Naruto was more than prepared this time, sensing his opponent's movements and using his true strength. He positioned himself so that he could avoid Suigetsu's sword slash and launched one of his more potent attacks. When Naruto placed both of his palms above his chest, Suigetsu heard the last words he spoke. "Futon! Shinzo Hakai!" Suigetsu's upper body imploded under the blonde's attack, causing an explosion of water all around Naruto. Even though Naruto knew this would not be enough to defeat his opponent, he did not let his guard down. As he had predicted, Suigetsu reappeared from a puddle not far from where they had been. Suigetsu remarked, recalling how Sakura's version of the hero's water elevated his chakra reserves from Jonin to Kage level. "Very impressive, you are definitely the incarnation of the wind. That won't be enough though. With our new training and this infinite water supply, I can last as long as I need to, even against a Jinchuriki like you." Alongside the observers, nobody from Otogakure's forces intervened in the battle, as Suigetsu had requested. They all appeared to be fighting with the renowned Kase no Kami, one of their elite Jonin. That pair was about evenly matched, some might even venture. Sasuke observed the battle unfold, memorizing every maneuver and attack style that Naruto employed. Even though he was unable to mimic any of those maneuvers, it was still beneficial to understand how his opponent carried himself in combat. "Looks like Suigetsu is holding his own against Naruto-kun. How about that?" Kabuto remarked, smirking, and Sasuke agreed. Sasuke addressed Tsunade's former apprentice, saying, "You did good, Sakura. Your version of the hero's water will be a great asset in my war against the Alliance's armies. Sakura smiled at her leader's congratulations, no longer thinking about the long-term effects of her actions. Conan had climbed back up to the surface and watched the fight from a slightly different vantage point. Though she trusted his judgment, she was concerned about her adopted younger brother. She smiled too, knowing that he probably had a plan in mind when she saw him smirking even after one of his attacks backfired. Returning with Naruto, Naruto watched as Suigetsu's body gradually reformed from the surface of a nearby puddle of water following another explosion. Since the fight started, they had moved around a good deal, leaving their marks clearly visible throughout the town. They were now close to a dilapidated structure that Naruto had demolished during one of his many attempts to defeat Suigetsu. Suigetsu taunted as he faced the blonde again, unscathed. "You are quite a stubborn one, aren't you? Your attacks may be powerful, but they can't destroy me." The moment he saw Naruto grinning at his own failure, his smirk vanished. Calmly, Naruto called out his next move. "You are right where I wanted you to be. This is the part where you die now." Futon. Kuroi Anna, was the shout that came out of Naruto's mouth as he reached out to Suigetsu and created his black hole jutsu precisely above the swordsman with silver hair. Everything was drawn into the singularity as the wind around it grew stronger and stronger. Suigetsu was among the vast amounts of water that were absorbed within the black hole. Rather than letting go of the compressed mass, Naruto used his free hand to negate a genjutsu he had been using to conceal something amidst the wreckage of the building they were near. The genjutsu gradually vanished from the imprisoned form of Suigetsu inside the vortex, exposing a massive blue dragon concealed amid the debris. Naruto had hidden this ice dragon, Hiranmaru, there in order to use it as cover for his impending attack. Futon. Some no mai, shouted Naruto as he channeled a column of wind chakra and lowered both of his hands beneath Suigetsu. Then Hiranmaru launched a massive blast of ice air in the direction of the wind column. Tsukishiro. Naruto used his ice dragon, Hiranmaru, to complete his combo attack. With lightning speed, the wind column turned into a massive vertical block of ice, enclosing the imprisoned Suigetsu. Once more drawing his katana, Naruto got ready to deliver Suigetsu the death blow. He was about to execute a horizontal slash when a massive purple monster appeared out of nowhere, exposing Sasuke's Susanoo. So much for the honorable one. On .1 Duel. A Megacure. The city center Sasuke's Susanoo deflected Naruto's blade, causing the ground to tremble just in time for it to miss the pillar of ice holding Suigetsu's corpse. It seems that the Otokage thought highly of his swordsman and didn't want to lose him. Naruto was taken aback by this to a greater extent than by Uchiha blocking his sword. Abruptly Naruto sensed a tremor in the ground beneath his feet, as though someone was attempting to assault him from below. His superior reflexes and speed allowed him to evade Kabuto's chakra scalpel attack. In an attempt to surprise the blonde, the second in command went under. Sadly, Naruto outran all of them in speed. Naruto sensed a presence behind him as he leapt backward, keeping his distance from Otogakure's dangerous leaders. This time, Sakura took her chance and tried to defeat him. Even though she wasn't very fast, her punch had a lot of power, so don't underestimate it. Since Naruto was aware that she was Tsunade's former apprentice, he moved to avoid her blow and then leapt in the direction of a far-off Hiraishin marker. After the flash, he reappeared and said, "Well, it looks like the party is over." Shutting his eyes, Naruto inhaled deeply before calling forth one more Hiraishin marker. He opened his eyes slowly, then hurled the kunai in Sakura's direction, who was his nearest opponent. He materialized in front of the kunoichi before her eyes could even blink, and he gave her a forceful punch to the stomach that rendered her unconscious. Before losing consciousness, she collapsed to her knees and gripped her stomach in agony. Her body was just lying there on the damp ground, soaking up the residual rain that covered the whole area. Without giving her a second glance, the blonde took down the woman with his kunai in midair, moved on to his next target without turning around. This time, he tried to target Kabuto in an attempt to repeat the process. After observing him dispatch Sakura, the second in command readied himself for the impending assault. Kabuto used his own hand signals as Naruto's kunai approached from his position, and he used a low-level wind jutsu to knock it away from him. "Do you really think so lowly of me? You would try the same attack pattern against me that you just used against Sakura?" Kabuto grinned. But when he discovered he couldn't find his opponent anywhere, he was taken aback. After he launched the kunai, Naruto did disappear, but he did not flash to its new position once Kabuto had pushed it away. Kabuto was startled out of his reverie when he heard Sasuke yelling at him in the distance. Naruto did throw the kunai, but he never employed his Hiraishin movement jutsu. The Otokage had witnessed the entire scene. After that, he just vanished, probably by using his special genjutsu, which even the Sharingan was unable to identify. The only person who noticed the distinct disruption in the rain's course was Sasuke, who was standing between Kabuto and Naruto as the latter moved stealthily in the direction of his unwitting victim. Sadly, he realized too late that Naruto had already moved into striking range and was too late to warn Kabuto. Yes, Naruto had foreseen that Kabuto would not be fooled by the same ruse he had employed against Sakura. Since Sasuke was the only person on the battlefield who could track him while he was concealed by the Kyoka Suigetsu perfect hypnosis technique, he decided to use genjutsu instead. After completing his attempt at taunting, Kabuto did not realize that Naruto was in front of him. The medic, who had silver hair, was grinning despite his apparent success in keeping Naruto away from him when he felt a sharp pain shoot through his body. Around him, the wind picked up forcefully, shattering his glasses. Then, slowly, from behind him, Naruto materialized. His right hand was outstretched, clutching a blood-stained katana blade. In an instant, a wide, deep gash covering Kabuto's upper body surfaced, and his blood spurted out of it. Naruto was able to prepare his body for such injuries because he was aware of his opponent's capacity to regenerate damaged cells. By ensuring Kabuto wasn't expecting the hit, the blonde stopped the high-speed regeneration jutsu from activating. Similar to Sakura, Naruto savagely moved on to his next victim as Kabuto collapsed to the ground, where he lay critically hurt and unconscious. After seeing Sakura fall to Naruto, the numerous Auto Shinobi who were still present had not yet moved. But when Kabuto fell, all of them reacted at once, and groups of Auto Jonin began to run in the direction of the blonde attacker. Naruto's hands began to flash through hand signals once more as he sensed their approach. A gust of wind left his hands and he cried out, "Futon! Hikuge!" as the groups of Auto Jonin advanced on his position. Sasuke's eyes grew wide as he realized right away which jutsu Naruto had just used against his soldiers. The blonde had launched precisely the same one when they had last met in a megacure. After the majority of his soldiers had been swept by the wind and breathed in, Naruto would somehow seize control of the wind and force it from their bodies, killing them all in the process. Sasuke also went through hand signs without wasting any more time. The Uchiha yelled, "Kaden! Gokakyu no Jutsu," as a massive fireball shot out of his mouth and between the group of Jonin and Naruto's move. There was a massive flash as a result of the two jutsu colliding. Before Naruto's wind could reach his men, Sasuke's fireball had already burned it away, giving him a smug expression. The collision of the two jutsu created a burning hell in the path of the advance, forcing the said shinobi to halt it. "Don't think I'll let you do as you please inside my city, Dobi. I've already seen that jutsu of yours once, so I won't let you use it again on my shinobi," Sasuke proudly told Naruto. The blonde scowled briefly as he considered his abortive attempt to eliminate his adversaries. Sasuke's comment didn't really bother him. What worried him was fixing a bug in his most recent method. But his doubts were soon dispelled when he grinned once more and conversed with Sasuke. Naruto answered, beginning a new series of hand gestures, "Not bad, Sasuke. That was not bad at all, considering you only witnessed it once. I was genuinely surprised when you managed to counter my newest creation, however, I'd like to see you block this one now." Naruto exclaimed, "Futon! Hikuryu!" After completing a slightly longer sequence of hand gestures, once more, Naruto's wind chakra rushed out of his hands, surprising Sasuke. Nevertheless, a dragon-shaped wind gust that made abrupt, haphazard turns in the air before reaching its target emerged in place of the linear, comparatively slow breeze. The mass of highly condensed wind chakra moving towards them in a completely random pattern had eluded Sasuke's men, who had not yet reacted. The only person with the necessary eyesight to witness the unstoppable chakra flow toward his gullible men was the Otokage. Without hesitation, they would breathe it in, which would ultimately result in their demise. The Otokage yelled, "Move back, you ignorant fools, he's going to kill every last one of you," as his men charged towards Naruto, not realizing the death trap that was waiting for them. It was too late when they finally heard his warning because Naruto's jutsu had already struck them squarely. What happened next would haunt anyone who saw it for the rest of their lives. All 50 or so of the Jonin in the group that was charging at Naruto perished, their hearts or lungs blowing out of their chest cavities. For a brief moment, the people who lacked the bravery to confront Naruto saw what would later be remembered as the Battle of the Raining Blood. Naruto turned to face Sasuke once more and said, "Now, where were we?" With no other option, Sasuke chose to cast the Koto Amatsukami against Naruto using his trump card. He attempted to launch his jutsu against the approaching blonde while channeling chakra through his eyes and activating the M's. Regretfully, Naruto had both of his eyes closed and had once again anticipated his response. With his eyes still closed, Naruto said, "You do know that I was in that room with you, right? When you used that dujutsu of yours to turn those guys into your loyal zombie servants." Naruto declared, "I don't need my eyes to defeat you." The blonde was aware that his ultimate form would enable him to sense every move his adversary made. When the blonde started to approach him, the raven-haired leader began to experience something strange, sheer terror. He was still in disbelief over Naruto's revelation and had not yet moved from his position. "Still only halfway to Sasuke," said blonde abruptly stopped. He averted his head, opened his eyes, and vanished in a flash of white without a second thought. Building remotely with Konan right next to Konan, who was observing his fight from a safe distance, Naruto made a reappearance. He noticed the Hiraishin marker he had given her prior to the mission, firmly embedded in the earth, but she appeared perfectly well. With a barely suppressed smirk, Naruto asked, "Are you alright, Konan? Why did you summon me, after having just been pulled from about to deliver Sasuke the beating of his life?" Konan said without turning to face Naruto, "Look around, we need to move out right now." Following the Kunoichi's instructions, Naruto observed numerous Auto shinobi entering the city. They arrived from all directions, probably scared by the massive ice pillar that was standing in the center of their city. With a smile for his adopted sister, Naruto said, "Thanks for warning me. I was so focused on Sasuke and the others that I almost forgot about our mission. Where is Kurenai Sensei though?" Konan responded as they made their way back to the building from which they had entered the city through the sewers. "She went ahead of us. Now come. Let's get out of here while we safely can. I'll explain everything to you on our way out." As they returned to the sewers and left the surface of AIM behind, Konan remarked, "Let's pick up the pace. She left more than 1 hour ago. Well, she should be slowed down a bit by the package she's carrying." "What package? Why did she leave before us?" Naruto inquired, trailing Konan's lead. "I'm not quite sure myself." Sasuke in a megacure. Sasuke realized why Naruto had abruptly left as reinforcements began to show up everywhere. Having returned from their previous assignments, Karen, Gurren, Kimimaro, and Jugo brought troops from the front lines. He was filled with rage as he surveyed his surroundings. Naruto was the only one responsible for his city's return to ruin. Even though they didn't actually have to fight, he knew he still lacked the necessary power to defeat the blonde. Sakura's body was taken to the hospital by Kimimaro and Jugo, who had hurried to her location. Karen visited Kabuto and attempted to use her special bloodline to heal him. Gurren was only cooperating with them because they were holding Yukimaru, and she was utterly indifferent to all of this. Sighing, Sasuke began using Kaden Chakra to dissolve the enormous ice structure that Naruto and his dragon summon had built during their fight. Suigetsu would probably sustain minor injuries that wouldn't be life-threatening, but his pride would undoubtedly suffer greatly. After finishing, the Otokage returned to the cage tower and began to consider how to strengthen himself. River Country. After a week, River Country was now the resting place for Naruto's group. At the moment, Konan and Kurenai were sleeping in separate hotel rooms, and Naruto went to talk to Gaara. As he had learned while on his espionage mission in AIM, Gaara had supposedly only used hit dot and dot run attacks to take over this country back then. Naruto was informed by the Kazekage that he battled Auto Shinobi while being commanded by a young woman with red hair and glasses. He exploited her apparent lack of experience in leading troops to battle by breaking through their defenses and compelling them to retreat back towards AIM. Kurenai informed Naruto that Itachi and Danzo were among Sasuke's captives after they arrived. He also found out that, for some strange reason she was unaware of, she had managed to smuggle out a boy they had been keeping in an artificial coma, and they were determined to find out as soon as possible. The boy had not yet regained consciousness, so Tsunade's experience might be required. Then Konan explained to him about the hero's water and how they were boosting the strength of their army. Lastly, Naruto described to them Sasuke's use of the brainwashing jutsu and his battles with the Uchiha and his lieutenants Sakura and Kabuto. After Naruto informed Gaara of his spying mission, Gaara remarked, "I see, that's most disturbing. Sasuke Uchiha managed to do all those things while we were trying to repel his armies." "Yes, and he's definitely stronger than before. I didn't encounter any Akatsuki member during that mission though. We have unfortunately no idea what the last 2 members of that group are up to," replied Naruto. "Anyway, good job on your mission. Kuretsuchi will arrive soon enough and we'll set out for Konoha immediately after her arrival. There are lots of things we need to discuss with the other members of the Alliance," Gaara replied. Naruto grinned and asked, "Oh, it's Kuretsuchi now. Whatever happened to Tsuchikage?" "Don't know. A bit familiar, aren't we?" He could not help but notice Gaara's embarrassed look as he spoke. Raising his hand, Gaara said, I don't see what you're talking about. This meeting is adjourned until Tsuchikage Dono arrives." He never turned around. Though his red-haired friend's response made Naruto smile, he couldn't help but believe that Gaara had the worst luck because his Biju was an insane, incooperative one. Perhaps, for once in Gaara's life, this new development marked the beginning of something positive. When Naruto considered Gaara's Biju, he realized how much he missed Natsuki. After Otogakure's invasion was announced, they had to leave so quickly that he was unable to say goodbye to his girlfriend in a proper manner. This brought to mind Bee and Yugito as well, and he wondered how they were faring from their end as well. The Hokage office in Konoha Tsunade was seated behind her desk, sipping from a glass of sake. She didn't really care that she had a ton of paperwork to complete. She was obsessively concerned about Naruto and his plan to infiltrate Omegakure. After Naruto arrived in Suna with Konan and Kurenai to finish his mission, Gaara had sent her an update, but nothing had happened since. The sound of Shizune entering her office startled her out of her reverie. The brunette reported to her master, Tsunade. "Sama, the Mizukage and Reikage have arrived with their escorts. They request a meeting with you immediately." "Fine, bring them to my office. Also summon Natsuki to my office, she will be needed for that meeting too," replied Tsunade. Shizune didn't want to keep Kage waiting for her, so she left right away. Konohagakure. Council Meeting Room 2 Anbu agents cautiously opened the council chamber doors, allowing the Mizukage and Reikage and their escorts inside. Tsunade was waiting for them, already seated. In the center of the space was a sizable table that had just enough seats for every alliance cage. Standing behind the Hokage were Natsuki and Shizune. According to convention, each cage could have no more than 2 companions during their meetings. Zabuza and Shojiro, 2 of Kirigakure's elite swordsmen, escorted Mei Terumi, the Mizukage. The 2 Jinchuriki of Kumogakure, Yugito and Bee, were accompanied by the Reikage, for obvious reasons. Tsunade had selected Shizune, her student and assistant, to stand beside her. But Natsuki didn't really get why she was at this meeting. She was proud to have been the most powerful Biju in the past, but she also realized that she was far from that status now. Tsunade stood up and gestured for her guests to take a seat at the table, saying, "I welcome you in Konohagakure, Mizukage. Dono, Reikage. Dono. Please have a seat so we can start this meeting." A and Mei went to take a seat, with their bodyguards watching intently from behind. When Tsunade sat down, Shizune and Natsuki followed suit and remained behind her. The blonde Hokage then gave the Anbu standing close to the doors a head turn, indicating that they should move on. Tsunade gave a hand signal and the room was sealed off from outside interference after they had left and shut the doors behind them. "The room is now sealed. Let us start this meeting then. Reikage. Dono, would you start please?" replied Tsunade. He gave her a nod before getting up from his chair. "Very well, as you all know, we managed to push back an invasion attempt by Otogakure in the lands of Shimogakure and Yugakure. They were easily defeated in the first weeks of the war. The overall level of their fighters was at most Chunin with a low number of Jonin. We had no difficulties to force them back to Rice Country, having the advantages of both the numbers and the skill. However, when we reached their borders, we had to face much stronger and numerous forces on their end. It's been going on for a week now and they stopped our counterattack at the borders of Ta no Kuni where we are at a stalemate now." It was reported that Tsunade turned to face Mei, who had just gone up to begin her report. "While our nation is still recovering from the civil war, when we received the reports from both Kumo and Konoha about the invasion from Oto, I immediately sent out troops to the front lines to offer assistance in any way they could. Konohagakure having a lot more ground to cover, most of our troops were sent here, in Hai no Kuni, in order to go strengthen the borders it shares with the enemy. We also noticed the rise in power of their troops in the last few days. One thing that I need to report is that they also seem to have the support of the troops from the lands they conquered. I find it highly suspicious and hope we will investigate this seriously." Finished her account and sat down. It was now Tsunade's turn to speak since she had chosen to speak last during the meeting as the host. "Your reports are consistent with what we've witnessed on the battlefield as well against Oto so far. Ever since my former teammate Jiraiya perished, our spying system is far less efficient than it used to be. Every country that Oto invaded shares borders with Hai no Kuni, yet we weren't able to predict and react in time. I've already sent our best team of spies to investigate the enemy and assess the situation for our allies on the other side of the continent. Naruto is leading that team, 2 weeks ago I received a letter from the Case Cage stating that Naruto and his team made contact with them on the other side. I know that they left Suna shortly after that and went to proceed with their infiltration mission in a megacure. They have yet to report back. Reported to them prior to sitting back as well. Mei said, not noticing Natsuki's glare when the former Biju heard the suffix the Mizukage had added to her future husband's name. That's most troubling. I hope everything is fine with Naruto-kun. Tsunade answered, the brat is fine, believe me. There is not much in this world that can take him down, but I can try to dispatch another team to aim if. But, before she could finish, a strange but recognizable voice interrupted. As a blinding white flash burst from inside the room, Gaara exclaimed, that won't be necessary, Hokage. Dono. Knowing what was going on in front of them, Natsuki smirked as she felt the chakra in her ring begin to charge. There were 5 more people in the meeting room when the light went out. Tower Cage in a megacure right now. Sasuke was in his office reflecting on what had happened in his city when Naruto attacked them. The blonde had sneaked into his capital, slaughtered several of his soldiers, and even gravely injured 2 of his staff officers. Sakura's only wound was a punch to the stomach, and she recovered quickly and without difficulty. As soon as Kabuto regained consciousness, his unique ability to regenerate cells kicked in, and he was soon up and running. Suigetsu was the one who sustained serious injuries after being hit by both Naruto's combo attack and his summoned ice dragon. The silver-haired swordsman spent a considerable amount of time inside the enormous block of ice. To survive in that icy hell, he had to expend every last bit of his remaining chakra. Sasuke had to be careful not to burn his own subordinate while using his fire techniques to free him. Sasuke could not bear the humiliation. All in all, the remnants of that fight with Naruto and their loss to the blonde were still present in the city. The worst aspect of this is that Sasuke remained completely motionless throughout the battle. Once the swordsman was at Naruto's mercy, all he did was cover for Suigetsu. Sasuke's blood curdled when he realized Naruto was playing with them. Nor was the situation on the front lines good. Karen informed him that they had lost the fight against the Alliance's armies in River Country, with Gaara leading the charge. His adversaries had succeeded in reuniting the continent's eastern and western halves. With the addition of the transformed soldiers and the application of Sakura's variant of the hero's water, the other borders nevertheless held. Sasuke was aware that the Alliance would eventually decide to use their combined forces to make a last stand against his territory. They can now precisely plan and coordinate their attack from all sides of his borders because they have lost River Country. He was limited in what he could accomplish on his own, and the opposing side possesses shinobi such as Naruto and Gaara. He learned the limits of his forces against more powerful opponents by Karen's example. The appearance of space-time distortion inside his office startled him out of his reverie. Even though the young Uchiha leader had seen that jutsu before, he was still in awe of it. Knowing that Naruto possessed his own space-time ninjutsu made him incredibly jealous. For the time being, he tried to focus on the new employee in his office and temporarily ignored Naruto. Sasuke greeted his new visitor, asking, "What are you doing here? Tobi or Madara, whatever your real name is." Tobi laughed and said, "You are in a nice mood as usual, so I thought I would pay a visit to my distant relative for a change. The powers you showed me are useful, but this is far from enough in order to defeat the Uzumaki. I demand you teach me that space-time ninjutsu of yours. I need it if I want to have a chance to kill him," Sasuke told the mysterious guest. Tobi responded in his typical tone, infuriating the Otokage even more. "Your eyes are still far too young to attempt using this jutsu. I may or may not teach you that jutsu once those eyes of yours mature to their final stage. Who are you? Are you really Uchiha Madara, my ancestor, as that blue-haired woman that used to work for you said? I demand you take off that mask and face me so I can see your face," Sasuke responded. Tobi answered, this time with seriousness, "Shut up. You only need to know that I'm a Uchiha like you. All will be revealed in time. For now though, stick to the plan and continue to defend the lands you conquered." Sasuke recoiled as the man in the mask yelled at him. "I can't defend these lands against an attack of all my borders at the same time. I only have limited resources and many men will die defending the borders. Now that they're conquered River Country back, that plan of yours to separate them in two failed. They will engage us with an organized army this time," Sasuke stated. "Will you stop whining for a moment? You are Uchiha, then act like it and not some scared genin that's going into battle for the first time in his life," Tobi responded with rage. "Even so, I'm only as good as the men I command. They have superior numbers and their top fighters are far more skilled than ours. This is something I learned the hard way in the fight against Naruto." Sasuke spoke with a voice full of desperation. Tobi said, using his space-time jutsu to bring someone else inside the room once more. You don't need to concern yourself with casualties. I didn't exactly come here empty-handed. Here, take him to your right-hand man. I have a plan that will even the odds and solve your resource problem. Curious about the package Toby had just delivered, Sasuke asked, who is he and how capturing him solves anything on this end? You ask too many questions, plus you wouldn't understand even if I explained the situation to you. Just get me Kabuto and we'll start from there. Council room. Konohagakure Naruto, Konan, and Kurenai appeared in the meeting room with the Kazekage and Tsuchikage as the Hiraishin's light gradually faded. Natsuki threw herself into her mate's arms and exclaimed, Naru-kun, I've missed you so much. This time, it was Mei who was raising her eyebrows at the sight of the reconciled couple. Tsunade grinned and said, You're finally back, you brat. I see you've brought some company with you too. In reference to the blonde and his guests. Kuretsuchi nodded in agreement as Gaara continued, Yes, we came here as soon as we could, thanks to Naruto. Before we go on with the meeting, there's something I would like to know. It's been on my mind ever since we started, but now's a good time to ask, I guess. Who is the woman with you, Hokage? Dono, and the one with you too, Naruto. I'm somewhat familiar with Yuhi Kurenai, with her profile in the bingo book, but those two women are unknown to me. I would like to know their identity before we proceed. The Mizukage was sitting up. The majority of people in the room knew who Natsuki and Konan were, so there was a little tension because they were worried about how the others would react. Gaara had already heard of Konan's background as an Akatsuki agent, as did Kuretsuchi. Conversely, it was aware of Natsuki's existence because of Bee and Yugito. Tsunade was the only Kage who was familiar with both of them, while Mei knew nothing about them. Naruto chose to speak first, interrupting the blonde Hokage who served as everyone else's host. With an eye toward his leader, Naruto said, Please allow me to proceed, Hokage. Sama. Tsunade gave him a nod and took a seat again. Naruto began, taking his time to look everyone in the eyes before continuing, even the escorts. Thank you. I guess for the benefit of the Alliance, I shall be sincere with every person present in this room. I know each and every one of you personally and hope you will understand why some of the facts I now reveal to you have been hidden until now. While A and Mei were shocked to find that someone from the Akatsuki was now working with them, Naruto remarked, First is Konan, who came with me. She is a former agent of the Akatsuki organization. She was in fact a member since its founding by my cousin Uzumaki Nagato, also known as Pain, the apparent leader of that group. After that, Naruto told them about his battle with his cousin and how it concluded. Then he explained to them about Tobi, also known as Madara, and how he arrived to aid Konan in leaving Omegakure. He ended by mentioning her recent enrollment in his clan and her involvement in the final espionage operation against Otto. I'm far from pleased to be informed so late of this, Naruto. The fact that you came here with Kazekage, Dono and Tsuchikage. Dono tells me they support your decision in granting amnesty to this Kunoichi. You most likely have the backing of your Hokage to so nothing me, or Mizukage. Dono would say at this point is useless, but I would like to be informed of such developments sooner the next time. A said from the seat next to Mei. Bowing his head to the two Kage who were unaware of Konan, Naruto said, I apologize for this and thank you both, for your understanding. Mei got up, and the Raikage nodded and sat down. She turned to face Natsuki, another redhead woman, and said, Now, who's this woman Naruto-kun? Tsunade and A closed their eyes, knowing what was really going on with Natsuki. With a smile, Naruto scratched the back of his head before continuing. She is Natsuki, my fiancé. However, you all know her for her other name, the Kyuubi no Yoko. Naruto said quietly. The audience was in disbelief as the vixen smiled back at Gaara, Kuretsuchi, Mei, and her bodyguards. Regaining his composure, Gaara asked, Is this a joke, Naruto? I assure you it's not, Kazekage. Dono. I replied. Before you ask, yes, I was aware of her existence. The same more or less happened with Yugito here. It is my understanding that this happened during their training trip after our first 5-Kage meeting in Iron Country. He continued with his response. Kuretsuchi questioned, intrigued by his word choice. How is this possible and what do you mean more or less? Yugito moved in front of her cage and gave her permission to speak after realizing that he would need her input. When Naruto trained with us, he offered to B and myself to go through what he called the unsealing. I decided to go along with it while B refused, each of us having our reasons that I won't discuss here. Yugito said, drawing the attention of the crowd. Naruto went first, seeing that it was his idea and his method was still experimental. It obviously worked for him, as you can see the both of them as two separate people. When my turn came, It didn't work completely, because my seal didn't work like the one for Naruto. The result is this. Yugito said with her eyes closed. When she opened her eyes again a few seconds later, they were flaming blue rather than black. Her entire morphology shifted to resemble her appearance when she used her tailed state, minus the chakra shroud. Yugito, or whatever was inside of her, said, "Nice to meet you all. My name is Matabi, but you all know me better as the Nibi." Unaware of the several eyebrows that raised when the other people in the room heard her refer to the cage as incredible, Kuretsuchi asked, "Is this procedure possible for Gaara too?" Unfortunately no, that is not possible. Shukaku or the Ichibi is a very uncooperative Biju, and this procedure only works on the basis that both Biju and Jinchuriki are cooperating with each other. I had to alter Gaara's seal in order to limit its influence on him in the past, and that's unfortunately the only thing I can do. Naruto responded with a tearful grin on his face. That's alright, thanks to Naruto's alteration of my seal I have a much better control of my powers and my Biju can't influence me anymore. But what about you guys? What does this mean about Akatsuki and their goal to seal off your Biju? Gaara replied. It is still possible, but really complicated for them since now they have to gather both me and Natsuki for their sealing to work, and all know that 2 targets are much harder to catch than a single one. This only applies to me though, Gaara. Yugito and B are still single targets to them, not that they are aware of my special condition though. Naruto laughed. Just as Mei opened her mouth to ask another question, the chakras of Matabi and Natsuki suddenly flared. The 2-tailed Biju inquired, "Did you feel it, Natsuki?" Natsuki answered, "Yes, that's his power. How is that possible?" With concern in his voice, Naruto asked his mate, "What is it Na-chan? Is something wrong?" The vixen answered, "There's someone with the Mokuton affinity nearby, most likely a spy." Thinking about this mysterious person with her grandfather's powers, Tsunade's eyes grew wide. Tenzo is still on a mission near the borders, so it can't be him. He would never spy on a cage meeting like this anyway. So who? Konohagakure. Council meeting room without giving the audience a chance to process the idea that Biju, or whatever they now stand for, can once again walk freely among the living. Natsuki and Matabi leapt in front of their respective cages and began searching the room for the intruder. The red-haired vixen had retrieved a meager amount of her previously boundless stores of Yuki. Still, she was unable to regain more than 1 tail's worth of her previous power due to the human body she had acquired from the unsealing. She therefore only possessed sufficient power to grant Naruto the Wind Bloodline's initial state. This was no mean feat, however, for the Muga no Kyochi bestowed upon her sufficient power to easily outclass any cage presently occupying that room. Matabi scanned the room with her enhanced senses. In this kind of situation, having the body of a fully developed Jinchuriki had advantages. It didn't take the blue-eyed Yugito long to find the spy by channeling Yuki to her nose and eyes. It appears that the intruder didn't give a damn about being discovered because Natsuki also located him with ease. They both cried out, "There, here," as they leapt to the middle of the room and struck the floor. Zetsu materialized from beneath the conference room as a result of the devastation, directly in front of the strongest kunoichi and shinobi in the elemental nations. Tsunade yelled, poised to leap in and break his neck, "You again. I should have known it was you the moment they spoke about my grandfather's Kekkei Genkei." But it was too late. A white flash erupted in the room, and Naruto vanished from his original location before reappearing moments later, his katana unsheathed, on the opposite side. As Zetsu's lifeless body slowly descended to the floor in the center of the room, everyone inside could only blink. "I was careless. I should have known they would have spies in every major village from the Alliance. Don't bother, it's just a clone of his." "Damn it," Naruto angrily exclaimed, putting away his sword, making hand signals, and then flinging 4 pieces of paper to the room's corners. The 4 seals emitted a brief glow before disappearing. "I'm sorry everyone, I should have verified the room myself before revealing those sensitive information. Now our enemy knows about Natsuki and we lost an important edge over them. I've sealed the room again, but I fear there is no much more to hide anymore," Naruto said, lowering his head. With nods of agreement from all the other leaders present, Ace said, "You're too hard on yourself, Gaki. There are 5 kage in this room, none of us thought about that." Reikage. "Dono is right, Naruto. We were already discussing some pretty important stuff in here with him and Mizukage. Dono before you arrived, so I should be the one held responsible for this room's security system. Anyway, what's done is done. We don't have time to lose over this issue. Let's just move on." Tsunade added, and Naruto agreed to her conditions. After everyone had taken their places, Naruto was asked to take a seat alongside the cage, who was now designated as the Alliance's leader. Kurenai made the decision to go stand behind Tsunade, while Natsuki opted to stay behind him with Konan. Gaara was the first to speak when everyone was ready to go on. Our first priority is to restore stability to every area in the elemental nations. To achieve this, we must eliminate the threat that Otogakure represents. With the recent conquest of River Country, we have an opportunity to organize a large-scale joint attack against them. The Kazekage continued. Before such an assault can be considered, there are some new developments that need to be known to this council, said Naruto. The blonde went on to tell them about Sasuke's new hypnotic dujutsu and how he used the hero's water to increase the strength of his army. When Tsunade discovered that Sakura had contributed to the development of the altered hero's water, she was extremely disappointed. The blonde Hokage could never have imagined that her lessons would be applied to the aspirations of a crazy Uchiha boy. Kuretsuchi said, still holding on to the memory that she owed it to her grandfather to kill the bastard who had used that jutsu against him. Hokage. Dono, is there anything you can tell us about that jutsu of his, since not all of us have the ability to fight with our eyes closed like Naruto? We foreigners have diverse levels of understanding about Konoha's Sharingan, so it would be great if you could provide us with everything you can on how to counter it. Shizune. Can you go summon them both? Tsunade asked, to which her assistant promptly responded, I am a master in the knowledge of how to treat physical wounds, however for the mental attacks I will have to consult with our expert, the Yamanaka clan head. The Hyuga clan head could also help us in finding ways to fight against the Sharingan. A Megacure. Office Cage right now, Uchiha Sasuke was dealing with paperwork, the scourge of all Cage. It seemed like every action he took in the shinobi world resulted in additional paperwork for him to complete. The reports he got from the front lines were appalling. Otto truly didn't need to lose River Country at this point, so its loss was a major blow to his plans. A Megacure was supposed to be the best location for his capital because it would allow him to attack 3 of the 5 major villages. The only issue was that in order to keep the Westerners apart from Konoha, he needed to have control over River Country. He was aware that putting Karen at the top of that area was a mistake on his part because she was more of a support role and wasn't really meant for the front lines. Naturally, in his army, failure was not an option. To deter the others from betraying him in the future, he needed to make an example of her. Her bloodline was quite helpful and had previously saved his life, so he couldn't exactly order her death. He was only able to demote her from any commanding duties. She was still just a soldier to him, merely above the level of a civilian. The fierce redhead took the news hard, but since she knew the Otokage had been acting strangely lately, she decided to hold her tongue for the time being. The sound of his second-in-command entering his office startled the young leader out of his reverie. With a typical sly smile on his face, Kabuto entered and waited for Sasuke to acknowledge him. The raven-haired Cage said, not even looking at him, what is it, Kabuto? This better be good news, because I'm sick of reading reports on how the enemies are pushing us back further inside our lands. I think the news I have to share about the front lines will satisfy you, Kabuto answered, maintaining a smile. Sasuke became agitated and said, do not test my patience, not now. He was not amused by Kabuto's cryptic remarks. Very well, the package to be delivered to us has been successfully integrated in the Omega project we were working on. Production is in progress and you can expect the first batch to come out in the next few days, Kabuto stated. Good, at last we will have enough firepower to stop them and even advance with this. How many of those will be ready by the end of the following week? Sasuke exclaimed, pleased with Kabuto's initial report. By that time, at least 50,000 will be ready for you to use them. Shall I proceed with the chakra enhancement phase as well? Replied Kabuto. Yes, I want them to be the strongest they can, before sending them out on the field. We can't allow the enemy to react before it is already too late for them to. Do what you have to do, but I want them all ready for the end of next week. Sasuke stated that there was no room for negotiation. Kabuto answered, it shall be done, Uchiha-sama. What of the other project I've assigned to you, Kabuto? Is it operational yet? Sasuke inquired. Yes, the device is ready to be tested. I can't believe you thought of that while going through the stuff Hanzo the Salamander left behind. It wasn't really a hard task to adapt it to match our needs, however, we will need a live test to make sure that it's definitely operational, replied Kabuto. Sasuke yelled, clearly wanting this project to succeed, I don't care for the details, send out an entire battalion with it if you need to, but I want results. Kabuto answered, bowing to his leader before leaving the room to carry out his orders. As you command, I shall dispatch a small unit equipped with the device towards Konoha to verify its efficiency. I know the perfect person to lead that mission. It will be her chance to gain back the respect she lost or simply disappear for good. After returning to the building's hallway, He called out a random Jonin as he was leaving. The silver-haired scientist said, "Summon Karen to my office. Oh, and tell her that I need her to gather a team and then report back to me as soon as possible." The Jonin nodded, vanishing in a wisp of smoke on his way out. Returning to his office in the city's research center, Kabuto thought to himself, "I'm pretty sure Karen will fail again. We just need someone to watch them from a safe distance and confirm the device's efficiency. Now, who should I pick to follow them?" Konohagakure. Compound Namikaze Naruto had returned to the village with Konan and Kurenai a day earlier. Right now, the blonde was lying in bed, fully nude, with his redhead partner curled up on top of him. With the proper silencing seals placed throughout the room, they had celebrated their reunion and Naruto's return through the night so as not to disturb Konan and the many other guests who were currently staying with them at the Namikaze compound. The meeting was supposed to resume this morning, but it was called off yesterday due to the approaching evening. Naruto had plenty of empty space in his family's house, so he extended hospitality to all the Kage and their supporters. He recalled making fun of Gaara and Kuretsuchi once more when he inquired about their desire to share a room. Projectiles made of sand and lava were hurled at him, but it was all worthwhile when he saw the look of embarrassment on Gaara's face. Even though it was still 6 in the morning, Naruto had developed the daily routine of rising early to train since his days of training with Jiraiya. He got out of bed slowly and completed his morning routine. When he was finished, he quickly left the manor. Ground of Training 8 in the middle of the training area for his former team, Naruto reappeared instantaneously. He didn't want to wake his guests, even though he could have used his own training ground. Considering that Hinata and Kiba were both Shunin and he was now a Jonin, he questioned whether Tsunade had reorganized the team for Team 8. Disregarding those ideas, the blonde began to get warm. Naruto waited for 2 hours before deciding to take a nap. Right now, he was sitting beneath a tree with his sword by his side and his ultimate wind form engaged. Because of his bloodline's ability to magnify all senses, he was able to avoid a group of Kunai that were about to impale him a mere second ago. The blonde instantly got to his feet and looked around to find the attacker. In an attempt to locate his opponent precisely within the Training Ground 8 forest, Naruto closed his eyes and directed chakra through his nose and ears. Naruto processed the information before proceeding through hand signs. 1, 2, 3. No wait, there's another one barely emitting any chakra a little further away from the other 3. Now to get all of them at once. Futon. Hakuryu, he exclaimed, hurling his most recent invention in the direction of his adversaries. The 4 targets that had not yet moved from their positions were in the path of the swiftly approaching white dragon. The enemy shinobi moved at the last second to avoid being sliced apart by Naruto's jutsu after it reached its first target. After giving his 2-step jutsu a moment to work, Naruto attempted to reverse the pull and use the wind in those 4 targets' lungs to kill them by force. When he heard no explosion, he questioned how or why his jutsu had failed. Since this was the first time, he was unable to remain silent. Without delay, he leapt to a great height and removed 2 Hiraishin kunai from his hands, hurling them in the direction of his adversaries. Before they could even register the strange kunai that had fallen close to them, it was over. Their target was behind them in a white flash, his sword drawn and dripping with their blood. The wind blew across Karen's body as Naruto materialized directly behind her, ready to sever her head with his katana, just as he had done with the other 3 Jonin she was leading on this mission. Karen used her sensor ability and saw that Naruto wasn't injured in any way. What the hell? Those kunai Kabuto gave us were supposed to cancel his wind abilities if we managed to throw them near him. Why is this not working? Damn it. Damn that white-haired freak. Karen thought to herself. As Naruto pressed his blade against Karen's neck, they heard the sound of the 3 headless bodies falling to the ground. Taking a closer look at his enemies, Naruto said, "Interesting, so that's how you guys managed to repel my powers. I have to admit that it's quite ingenious of whoever thought of this." Each of them was wearing a mask that prevented them from breathing in his wind chakra. He took off Karen's mask violently and stood in front of her, his blade still pressed against her throat. Before removing her mask, he had some inkling that she was a woman, but her long red hair took him by surprise and brought to mind a picture of his mother that he had seen back at the compound. "Who are you?" inquired Naruto. Karen shot back, "I'm not saying anything to you, Konoha monster." Naruto made her realize how serious he was before she could say anything more by carefully moving his sword and drawing blood from her neck. He asked in a grave tone, "Why did Sasuke send you here on a suicide mission?" The red-haired Kunoichi responded, What are you talking about? We were sent here to eliminate you with the special wind suppressor kunai Kabuto developed? Now that's weird. No one except for me knows how my wind powers really work. However, those masks of yours, those are what he really wanted to test and to do that you needed to come close to me. I guess you weren't aware of the true parameters of your mission, so you're unfortunately not really of any use to me," Naruto said before he killed her with the back of his blade. After turning off his bloodline and securing the bodies of the 3 Jonin he had just killed, Naruto headed to the Hokage Tower carrying his unconscious prisoner. After Naruto left, a shadow gradually emerged from a tall tree close to the scene of the previous battle. Zetsu got up from the tree and observed the battlefield damage. Once more, he had seen everything, and only those Biju were able to identify him. With a ton of information to relay to his allies, he gradually vanished once more after completing his mission. River region staring at the boundaries between river and rain country, Naruto paid no attention to the shinobi encamped behind him. At their most recent meeting, they decided that this location would serve as the launchpad for the Alliance's counter-offensive against Sasuke's forces. It was probably the area with the least fortified borders because it had once been a part of the enemy's domain. Naturally, this did not mean that there would be a single front, since a sizable portion of the continent was still under the control of Otogakure and its allies. The Alliance's forces were estimated to number in the 50,000, while Otto possessed nearly 30,000, according to the spies. Even with these advantages, there was no guarantee that the Alliance would win out in the end because of the Akatsuki, as no one was really sure what they had left. An army of 10,000 ninja, made up only of Konohagakure shinobi and kunoichi, stood behind Naruto. In an attempt to foster harmony and peace among the 5 great villages, a proposal was made during the most recent meeting to combine troops from each village into the various armies that would attack Otto. Surprisingly, Naruto, the leader, rejected the idea, but not before providing some context. The blonde explained his rejection of that specific proposal with 2 justifications. Firstly, it would require a great deal of logistical work and time to organize such a shift in the makeup of the various armies that are currently stationed around Otogakure's borders. The Alliance was pressed for time and needed to seize the opportunity presented by River Country's collapse before Otto could regroup and strengthen its defenses. Naruto brought up the environment and functional knowledge as his second point. Placing an Iwa soldier on the other side of the elemental nations, say in Fire Country, made no sense at all because each man knew the terrain and surroundings better than anyone else from where they were used to fighting. It is also true that Iwa shinobi would function much better in a team led by a shinobi from his own village than one from a foreign village. This would be especially true if the team members were from a historically rival village like the Leaf. As no Kage could muster an objection against the Alliance's leader, the decision was made for each army to stay in its current location, with little to no troop movement within the allies. Everyone was aware that Naruto chose this arrangement because it was the best one from a strategic standpoint, especially given the limited amount of time they had, rather than to separate the people from each nation. Everyone still recalled his speech at the inaugural Kage meeting in Iron Country, where he advocated for international unification and spoke of his dream, shared with his late sensei, Jiraiya the Toad Sage, of seeing people come to understand one another at last. Kirigakure was the lone outlier. Mei, who had no borders with any of the nations commanded by Sasuke, chose to send her troops eastward between Konoha and Kumo, with additional reinforcements in Fire Country because of its location. This would be the front line in the east. It also enabled Tsunade to assign, with Suna's help, the majority of the men he currently commanded to Naruto. The blonde's mission was to advance northward from his location in River Country, battling the borders that were still flimsily guarded from the south of Ain. Iwa and Suna shared the western front, while Kuretsuchi and Gaara were assigned to attack Takigakure and Kusagakure, respectively, from the opposite side of the continent. For the army he commanded, Naruto only asked for a select few individuals. He requested Kurenai, Hinata, Kiba, and the former members of Team 8. Given that they were his former genin team and that he got along well with them in Konoha's regular forces, this was a sensible decision. He also asked for Konan, and even more unexpectedly, Karen. The fact that he had found a real blood Uzumaki woman with her still astounded him. Although he had suspicions from the moment he took her prisoner, even Tsunade was taken aback to learn that the red-haired Kunoichi was actually an Uzumaki and that Naruto was actually her distant relative when the blood test results were revealed. Like Naruto, Karen was an orphan, and when she learned of her background, her happiness nearly overcame her memory of Sasuke and Kabuto's treachery. Naturally attracted to one another, Karen accepted Naruto's offer of a spot in his clan and compound when he made it. Karen was more akin to the spoiled younger sister Naruto never had than Konan or Kurenai. Tsunade selected the remaining soldiers, the majority of whom were youthful but neither inexperienced nor feeble. This was merely to ensure that she would know that no one he commanded would likely harbor resentment toward him for rumoredly harboring the Kyuubi within him. The fact that the Biju had long since been released from the seal was still very highly classified information. Speaking of the devil, Natsuki was undoubtedly with him. While she wasn't nearly as powerful as she once was, she was still powerful enough to leave her house and not remain at home like a civilian. If the blonde ever went too far, she was the only person who could stop Naruto, even though she was as strong as a cage. Despite Naruto's repeated arguments that he couldn't risk having her on the battlefield, the red-haired vixen refused to listen and followed him regardless of whether he was the Alliance's leader. Refocusing on the current situation, Naruto realized that today was Otto's fall day in accordance with their battle strategy. In conjunction with the Eastern Command Center, in order to be able to reach their soldiers on each front line, Tsunade, Mei, and they decided to locate their joint command center to the northwest of Fire Country. Apart from their duties as commanders of their troops, every cage made the decision to focus on a specific area of camp management. They assigned Tsunade to manage the newly established hospital, Mei to supervise the detainee area, and A to handle camp security. One of the council's resolutions to counter Sasuke's Dujutsu was this one. Mei was in charge of a few Yamanaka who were to remove any mental restraints and scan each prisoner they would take. Inoichi informed them that he had already come across one or two individuals who were under the control of the Koto Amatsukami and that the more seasoned members of his clan were capable of dispelling the jutsu. Consequently, a limited group of Yamanaka members were sent to every front line. While Inoichi traveled to the west with Gaara, Ino was dispatched to the south with Naruto. The Raikage carried out a different council resolution that dealt with identifying those affected by that genjutsu. Ao claimed to the council that he could sense someone using that jutsu thanks to his implanted Byakugan. Following Hiyoshi's confirmation, a specific number of Hyuga were sent to each front to aid in preventing controlled individuals from interfering with their mission. While Hanabi and Hiyoshi stayed in Fire Country, Neji moved west. Hinata was also protected because Naruto had already chosen him to be one of his soldiers. Tsunade finally insisted on assigning a specialist medic to every front line. While her assistant Shizune went west and Naruto already had two of Tsunade's apprentices, Hinata and Ino, with him, the Hokage stayed in Fire Country. It was also found that Karen possessed a remarkable healing ability, which was probably inherited from her Uzumaki ancestry. Naruto was very hesitant to allow her to use her powers in this way after seeing the bite marks on her body, but the redhead insisted that she wanted to exact revenge on those who had abandoned her to die. Naruto gave in once more because he could never say no to the women in his life. In conjunction with the Western Command Center, similar to the outpost in the east, Gaara and Kuretsuchi had established theirs in Earth Country so they could both supervise the sieges of Takigakure and Kusagakure. There was Shizune, Neji, and Inoichi as well, and they all went about doing the tasks assigned to them in the camp. One significant distinction between this camp and the one on the other side of the enemy territory was that Kuretsuchi was the only one in charge of it. Her fellow Kage had made the decision to be elsewhere. Gaara made the decision to spearhead the attack on his own, despite the risks and the fact that he was one of Akatsuki's targets. He justified this by saying that even the leader of the alliance, Naruto, was willing to put his life in danger while fighting. He didn't see why his friend should fight for them all while he was shielded and kept back from the front lines. Though Tamari was extremely dissatisfied with his choice, she was at a loss for words with her Kage. If Kankuro hadn't stayed in Suna to supervise the protection of their borders and the security of the village, he too would have objected. Kuretsuchi saw this and wanted to join in on the fights, too, not wanting to appear weak in front of the man she grew quite close to. To ensure everyone's cooperation, though, a Kage had to be present in every command center. The brunette was thus compelled to stay in the camp. The other Kages on the eastern side were more seasoned and composed. Instead of taking part in the fighting themselves, they all opted to stay behind and gather their forces. Right now the Tsuchikage was in the camp's communication building, which served as a central hub for radio communications. Kuretsuchi checked the time and saw that Operation Stormbringer was about to get underway. With a heavy sigh, she got ready to tell the soldiers that the mission had begun. Once more in the river country now that the Southern Army was prepared, every man and woman under his leadership had taken up hiding in the forest to Naruto's rear. Their task was straightforward. They had to breach the enemy's defenses and advance from their current location. But, Naruto's forces were ordered to move straight towards the borders east and west after breaching the southern defenses in order to attack the defenders from behind during Operation Stormbringer, rather than trying to retake the fallen city of Omegakure from Sasuke. This would continue throughout every nation until the villages are completely encircled and have no way out. It was nighttime. All around them was dark, and the only noises they could hear were those coming from the nearby forest. Two puffs of smoke materialized in front of Naruto, and two of his dragon summons leapt out at that moment. The first one was reported as Naruto. Sama, the Eastern Army has begun the mission. The second one declared, Naruto. Sama, the Western Army is on the move as well. Naruto dismissed the two creatures, saying, very well, thanks for the help, you can both return to the dragon world. The blonde then addressed his army as he turned back to face them. The time has come to start our mission. As I speak, our brothers and sisters have already begun to engage the enemy all over the continent. All are waiting for us to join them. From our actions will depend the success of this mission. The fate of the elemental nations will be decided today. We shall prevail and free this world from Otogakure and its allies. Move out, Naruto said as he took the first step to leave. He was quickly followed by Natsuki, Konan, and Karen, and soon after that the entire army did as well. Everyone knew he was the alliance's leader up until this point, but only those closest to him were aware of his suitability for the position. But now that they could see his excitement and passion, everyone followed him, confident he would guide them to victory. Tower Cage and Omegakure alone in his office, Sasuke continued to ponder how to vanquish Naruto and take control of the entire world. He was obviously aware of the blonde's position as the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, but Zetsu's account of the nine-tailed Biju's release from the seal truly made him feel awful. Throughout their interactions, he always believed that Naruto had somehow betrayed him by upstaging him, an elite Uchiha, by utilizing an outside power source. How could a talentless, clanless idiot like him beat him? There was no other explanation. The sound of three persons entering his office startled him out of his reverie. Kabuto entered through the door, Zetsu materialized, and Tobi suddenly materialized through a wormhole. Otokage. Sama, the alliance is attacking our borders from the south. According to the reports, Naruto himself is leading the assault. With their current speed, they will be here in about 30 minutes. Kabuto first informed his superiors. They are also crossing the borders of the other nations under your command. Rice, Waterfall and Grass countries are being overrun by the combined forces of their western and eastern armies, announced Zetsu. Tobi questioned the younger Uchiha leader. It looks like the last struggle for the dominance of the elemental nations has started. How do you plan to react to their aggression, Sasuke? Recall all our troops here into the city. They won't be able to defeat us here behind the fortified walls of the city. The other countries will have to hold on until we're done with Naruto and his little army here in the south. Sasuke screamed. He smirked and thought, if that blonde idiot thinks I only have 10,000 men stationed here in Rain Country, he will have a nice surprise when he comes here. With his new orders to gather all of their soldiers from the city's periphery and gather behind its walls, Kabuto departed right away. Alongside Naruto, the blonde kept moving inside Rain Country even as Sasuke was pulling out all of his soldiers to return to his capital, where he expected Naruto and his army to confront him. Naruto had thousands of men pursuing him as he advanced quickly. They let Sasuke's spies tell their leader where they were going without even attempting to hide their presence. All of this, though, was prearranged. Naruto wasn't actually present, and the individuals he surrounded himself with were shadow clones that he created to resemble an army on the march. His real forces were already split into two groups, each with the identical order to advance toward the borders and obliterate the adversary from behind. The Cage knew Sasuke would attempt to hold on to his position, regardless of the number of men he would have to lose, and had anticipated his response. Naruto's forces blocked the Oto soldiers' escape routes, which led to a swift invasion and the capture of many of them. Naturally, there were casualties on both sides because the Koto Amatsukami had programmed the majority of them to obey orders without question. With so many prisoners and injured returning from the front lines, medics and mind walkers were now extremely busy. The allies who were still able to fight carried out their mission while the captured enemies and injured allies were promptly evacuated to the nearby nations. After circumnavigating Omegakure, the two factions reunited to form a single army and soon found themselves back in Rain Country's northern region. Before the enemy could even realize what they were really aiming for, they moved back up north toward Grass Country to repeat what they had just done, rather than heading toward the capital. Time. Skip. After 3 days. After 3 days of combat, the armies of the Alliance ultimately succeeded in regaining control over every nation that had been under Otogakure's influence. Rain Country was an exception, with the city of Omegakure remaining inhabited. Every time, Naruto's army employed the same strategy. They went behind the enemy's lines and blocked their escape routes while the armies of the east and west were attempting to breach the other side. Tanigakure and Kusagakure attempted to fight back behind their walls, just as AIM was doing at the moment, but they lacked the resources in a cage to withstand the combined might of the 5 great villages. During Operation Stormbringer, Otogakure was thought to have lost 15,000 men, The defender side suffered horrific losses. The Mind Walkers of the Yamanaka clan had taken 5,000 men and were scanning them. Even so, the alliance lost 5,000 men, the majority of them in the Tanigakure and Kusagakure sieges, two small villages. Sasuke's armies, drones, battled valiantly, taking as many casualties as they could. It was now the morning of the fourth day that Operation Stormbringer had begun, and at the cage meeting that day, Tsunade received an extremely unusual gift. The one and only Haruno Sakura, the head of the medics of Otogakure, was gagged and blindfolded in front of Naruto and the council of the Five Cage. The head of the Yamanaka clan and the Hyuga clan both escorted the pink-haired Kunoichi as she was brought before the council. Tsunade asked calmly, hoping for a specific response from the two men in front of her, "So, what's her status?" "I'm afraid to say she is totally free of any form of mind control, Hokage-sama. My eyes could not see any trace of the Uchiha's Dujutsu on her neither," Hiyashi stated. Naruto mused aloud, "I see. Now what to do with your former apprentice?" Strong Command Center Haruno Sakura could hear conversations going on around her, but she was blindfolded and unable to see the faces of the people holding her captive. All she could recognize were the voices of her former academy classmate Naruto and her former sensei Tsunade. When the Kunoichi heard what they were talking about, her mood darkened. She was accused of high treason, and they had even devised a method to separate those who were actually under Sasuke's Dujutsu, or mind control. She was shocked at how easily she had been taken in, even by Yamanaka Ino, her erstwhile rival for Sasuke's affections. Before the alliance could begin its siege of Kusagakure, she was in the process of fleeing the city. She was captured by Naruto's forces before they could reach Omegakure, just like many others in her situation. The blonde disarmed the several Jonin who were accompanying her, and Ino surprised her with an unusual genjutsu. The rest is history, and her chakra was sealed and her movements limited when she eventually awoke. The next thing she knows, she's transported to a room where her classmate and former teacher are talking about her future with people she didn't even know existed. The Raikage, observing Tsunade wavering in her choice of how to handle Sakura, declared, "There is but one fate for those who betrayed the trust of their comrades in village, Hokage, Dono." Though Tsunade did not appear to be awakened by his words, Naruto chose to get up beside her and speak the words she knew she had to say but was reluctant to say because of her relationship to the convicted Kunoichi. "Haruno Sakura, for your crimes against the leaf you are hereby sentenced to death. You would have been granted a quick and painless death, were your crimes only limited to your act of treason against Konoha. However, for your participation in the systematic and organized genocide of the population from the several villages your master Uchiha Sasuke invaded, you will be executed in public as soon as the situation allows it. Hiyashi, Inoichi, I want her chakra permanently sealed and her memory fully scanned for any information you may deem relevant to help us win this war against her master," Naruto stated. In a room full of leaders, the two clan heads were taken aback by Naruto's presence and the way the blonde exuded authority. They both nodded before removing the prisoner. As soon as they managed to pry whatever they needed out of her head, she would be escorted back to Konoha. Unfair as it may seem, Sakura was guilty, everyone knew it, and they had unwavering proof of it. Yet, she was never given the opportunity to speak for herself throughout this. Naruto closed the room with hand signals and uttered, "Now, let's move on with this meeting, shall we?" They couldn't be too cautious about this going forward, considering the enemy's recent prowess in sneaking into even the most fortified locations. Every cage reported to the assembly, hour by hour, the details of every battle they had against Otogakure's forces. Since Konoha fought on more front lines and had specialized teams sent all over the continent with their medics, mind walkers, and Byakugan users, it was to be expected that Konoha suffered more casualties than any other village. During that period, it was also decided that the recently liberated territories from the enemy's armies would be placed temporarily under the protection of the alliance, at least until all those nations could rule independently once more. As a result, Suna took grass, Iwa got waterfall, Kumo had rice country, and Kiri had to manage hot spring country for the time being. Because of Konan and her connections to rain country, Naruto and Tsunade decided that Konoha should lead rain when it was once again free of Sasuke's control. Naruto spoke, capturing the attention of everyone in the room once more as he discussed the last stronghold still under Sasuke's influence. Now that all those things are out of the way, we have one final matter to discuss, Omegakure. Tower Cage in Omegakure Uchiha Sasuke, speaking of the devil, claimed that the young man was pacing his office at the moment. He was angry, no, he was incensed at the blonde and his companions for making fun of him yet again. Given that he was both a Uchiha and a Cage, he assumed that the enemy would target him initially. However, they ignored a megacure entirely and only pursued the other secondary targets. He was now cut off from all contact with the other shinobi villages that he commanded. Additionally, he lost contact with Sakura. Although the kunoichi lacked much combat prowess, her healing abilities would have come in quite handy given the large number of injuries they sustained on this particular day. When this whole mess began, she was supposed to be visiting Kusagakure in its new poison research facility. All he knew was that they had to escape after the village was attacked. Because of this, he realized that all he had left was the fortified city of Omegakure. The Alliance's armies had surrounded them, a massive siege had been established, and they were now encircled from all sides. Even Rain Country was now beyond his control. Of the 30,000 men under his command at one point, only 10,000 remained, and even then, a good quarter of them were wounded. The others were worn out and under a lot of stress. Ultimately, he decided to have faith in the project that Tobi and Kabuto had been working on for the past few weeks. His second-in-command walked into his office and snapped him out of his reverie. Kabuto grinned as he stood in front of his leader and said, "I'm here to report the success from the activation of the clones, my lord." Satisfied, Sasuke inquired back, "Finally some good news. How many of them were viable so far?" 75,000, my lord. I took the liberty to deploy the rest all around the village, but some are still in the underground lab. Kabuto responded, pulling out a small map to show Sasuke where their new forces were positioned. Sasuke remarked, observing that the masked man was not with Kabuto, "You did well. Now, where is Tobi? Was he not working with you on this project?" "He was, my lord, but he disappeared as soon as the clones were activated. You better than anyone else know how hard it is to track that man with his space-time jutsu." Kabuto sighed. "I see. What of the prisoner Tobi brought that helped to speed up the project?" asked Sasuke. "Still locked within the underground lab. I've put him under with pretty strong drugs. He shouldn't wake up any soon," Kabuto stated. Sasuke hasn't really been in contact with his staff lately. Ever since the Alliance's counterattack began, the Otokage has just stayed locked inside his office, occasionally meeting with Kabuto. "What about Suigetsu, Guren, Kimimaro, and Jugo? What are they all up to?" "Suigetsu is dealing with the remains of your army, Jugo and Kimimaro and restless ever since Sakura disappeared, and I haven't seen Guren in a while. I'm afraid she discovered that Yukimaru is no more under our care and she plans or already did betrayed you," Kabuto responded. "We'll deal with that woman later. For now I want you to go with Suigetsu and oversee the healing of the injured. I want them all ready to fight once the enemy attacks us once again." Sasuke issued a new directive to Kabuto. The scientist with the silver hair left right away, leaving Sasuke by himself in his office once more. They would have seen the odd-looking bird flying in circles over their city if they had both taken the time to glance out the window. All it would have taken to identify the creature as a small dragon that Naruto had summoned to survey their defenses was a single glance with the Sharingan. The dragon spy only stayed long enough to identify the city's primary defenses and gauge the number of soldiers stationed there. The creature dispelled itself in order to get back to its summoner more quickly because there was a lot to report and Naruto needed to know what it discovered right away. Re-entering the Alliance's central command, a puff of smoke interrupted Naruto and the five Kage as they were still deliberating over the specifics of their impending attack on the city of Omegakure. A small dragon materialized out of the smoke, and it swiftly flew in the direction of its summoner, Naruto, to report on the enemy's base. Naruto. "Sama, in accordance with your wishes, I ventured out to examine Omegakure's defenses. They have constructed a substantial wall encircling the city, and its surface is riddled with traps to prevent intruders from scaling it. Furthermore, they install some sort of long-range anti-siege weaponry on the rooftops of their extremely tall towers, which gives them even greater range for throwing large rocks over long distances. Ultimately, I estimate that their army consists of at least 80,000 men. However, there seemed to be something strange about the majority of them. I couldn't pinpoint what it was." The dragon bowed down in front of Naruto and uttered these final words. The audience was astounded by the newfound knowledge from Naruto's spy and astounded by the extent of Sasuke's remaining capabilities. "We all knew it was a possibility before Operation Stormbringer was initialized. In exchange for taking back all the territories that Sasuke invaded, we would in return, at least temporary, turn our eyes away from him and allow him to fortify his position while we take out his outposts," he replied. "But to think he still had that much soldiers under his command. They greatly outnumber us and furthermore, they hold the defender's position in the higher grounds," Mei continued. "We won't be able to come that much closer to their walls with their long-range weapons." Gaara was thinking aloud. "Even if we take those machines out of the equation, their walls are still on our way. We won't be able to climb them so easily if they are trapped and have guards shooting us down over them, Kuretsuchi said. What are you thinking about, Naruto? You're too quiet, Tsunade questioned the leader of the alliance. We can't get any closer to the city without losing many men in the process, and even if we could, we'd still be outnumbered 2 to 1 with them having the higher grounds, said Naruto. We already know that, Gaki. What are you trying to say? He yelled. You all only see the battlefield from a 2-dimensional perspective. Nevertheless, if we were to think about a 3-dimensional perspective of the same battlefield, there are 2 additional entrances that none of you have yet to think about. We still encircle them from every angle, so unless they choose to come out from behind their walls and expose themselves, we have all the time and room we need to plan an attack on them. Let's get to work, Naruto said, missing the stunned expressions on everyone in the room. Many of us have summoning contracts that would help us with the upcoming plan. My dragons could prove very useful in getting us over their defenses by flying over them. So now, let's get to work. The blonde exclaimed, Ninpo, Kachiyose no Jutsu, as a tiny dragon creature was called into the world of humans. A Megacure. After a week. The Alliance had been laying siege to the city of Megacure for an agonizing week. The soldiers didn't mind because they were either Zetsu's mindless clones or the soulless drones that Sasuke had programmed to carry out his orders. Sasuke and his staff were the ones under strain. They were unable to get a good night's sleep because they knew their enemy was waiting for them just outside the city walls. Sasuke even began to question whether the Alliance's strategy involved doing nothing more than obstructing their escape routes while watching them starve to death. But the sound of the alarm, echoing through the city, finally broke the stillness on the dawn of the 7th day of waiting. Thousands of creatures were spotted in the sky above the already cloudy sky of the city where it never stops raining. A Jonin stormed into Sasuke's office, shouting, We're under attack, Uchiha Sama. It's the Alliance's armies, they're attacking us from above. Sasuke said, climbing to the top of his cage tower to gain a better perspective of the fighting. To the walls, idiots, to the walls. Take position on the walls and shoot them down. The remaining members of his staff, Kabuto, Kimimaro, Jugo, and Suigetsu, soon joined him. Mei, Kuretsuchi, and Gaara in tow. Mei, Kuretsuchi, and Gaara led the attack from above. Riding summoned creatures from all the summoners that could summon flying animals, they had 10,000 men with them. The majority were supplied by Naruto, who used the reverse summoning technique to bring Ruo, the Dragon King, and his entire realm to Earth with him. Gaara was also present, offering them his sand shield as a counterweapon to the defenders' weaponry. With his chakra controlled sand, the cage hovered above the sky, out of the enemy's reach. Because of their extensive knowledge of Yoton ninjutsu, Mei and Kuretsuchi were selected to spearhead the attack. This allowed them to use their highly effective lava attacks to bombard the city from above. Though they did not deal as much damage as the 2 Kage, the men and women accompanying them were still effective in hitting the city from their positions using exploding tags. Sasuke's men lost several crucial minutes to regroup, which gave the Alliance's forces the opportunity to strike numerous strategic defense systems. If they wished to win this battle, they had to first take out the long-range artillery, which was their top objective. Next on the list was to take out the main doors, which would allow the 20,000 men positioned outside to sneak into the city. Gaara used his radio transmitter to get in touch with his allies as Sasuke's men began to fire back against the aerial assault. With B.A. and Naruto over the Alliance's commander's private channel, the words, Phase 1 is clear, I repeat, Phase 1 is clear, could be heard. Naruto said, receiving nods from the Raikage and his brother, that's Gaara's signal. The enemy is currently drawn to their walls, it's our chance to strike them in the back. They were presently in the same sewer system that, not too long ago, allowed Kurenai, Konan, and Naruto to enter the city. Naturally, the entrance they had originally entered had been sealed off, but in the time they had left, more tunnels had been dug and a great deal of explosive tags were being set off directly beneath the Megacure's town center. As the main players in the alliance, Naruto, A, and B were picked to spearhead the underground attack. It was probably the deadliest man alive when it came to close quarters, but Naruto and B were juggernauts, monsters of chakra and stamina. 10,000 men were with them as well, prepared to leap from the hole they intended to make with the explosion of those tags. Naruto sent a silent command that set off all of the exploding tags with a single sign of the ram hand. A massive blast ensued, creating a massive chasm directly beneath the Megacure's center. A yelled as their group leapt out of the enormous hole they had just made, "Let's go men! Fight if you want to live." The Raikage instantly turned on his Raiden no Yoroi, which greatly increased his strength and speed. Naruto and B exchanged a sidelong glance before trailing the agitated cage. Naruto used his ultimate wind form, the Teni Muho no Kiwami, while B summoned the Hachibi Yuki and changed into his tailed beast form. When they got to the surface, they discovered that the Raikage had already started to go crazy with the first defenders he came into contact with. With a sigh, Naruto pulled out a kunai that had an odd-looking tag on it. The blonde launched it into the air, and when the tag triggered, a bright red flash appeared above their location. Alongside Yugito, Natsuki, and Tsunade from a Megacure's town center, explosion sounds could be heard all the way to the Alliance headquarters. A few seconds later, the red flash could also be seen. That's our sign to begin the ground frontal assault. Yugito, Natsuki, you take the lead and I will organize our forces and see to the injured ones from behind. Tsunade was speaking to the two kunoichi. Yugito stood in front of the 20,000 men standing in attention behind her and said, "Hi, Hokage. Dono. You heard her, we move out. As soon as the gates fall we will charge right through them." There was another explosion, nearer to them. The Tsuchi and Mizu cage's combined attack was what destroyed a Megacure's main gates. Natsuki called out, "Let's go, the gates have fallen," as they all rushed forward. The top of the cage tower is a Megacure. When the city's main gates were breached, a violent explosion rocked the entire region, shocking Sasuke and the rest of his staff. All they could do was look on in dismay from a distance at the two kunoichi who had done that, the Mizukage and the Tsuchikage, who were perched atop two summoned medium-sized dragons. Even though Otogakure had a 2-to-1 numerical advantage in terms of army size, the Alliance was still able to outmaneuver them by taking advantage of their confinement. Sasuke's troops were just starting to retaliate against the enemy's aerial forces when he saw his city's center collapse, accompanied by the synchronized appearance of a massive hole created by explosives beneath the surface of the earth. Leading that ground attack were the Raikage, Naruto, and the Hachibi Jinchuriki. Those three were army killers. That is, they were strong enough to take out a lot of enemies by themselves. As soon as he emerged from the hole, the lightning shadow, clad in his Raiden no Yoroi, began destroying Otogakure's army, living up to his legendary reputation. His entire nervous system was enhanced by this jutsu, making it possible for him to move and respond to situations far more quickly than any other living human could. Because of his extreme speed, it was nearly impossible for his adversaries to notice him moving until it was too late to avoid him. The younger brother of the Raikage and Jinchuriki of the eight-tailed octopus, Killer B, came next. B instantly transformed into his Biju form and began to rampage through the city, demolishing structures and trampling his adversaries underfoot like ants. Jutsu, weapons, or anything else they could throw at him would not affect him because of his enormous size, save from slightly slowing him down. And lastly, there was Uzumaki Naruto, the former Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed fox and leader of all the Alliance's forces. When the blonde leapt out of the Teni Muho no Kiwami hole, his ultimate wind form was already activated, giving him godlike control over the wind element. Kabuto's ability to create a counter to one of Naruto's most devastating jutsu, the Hikuge or its derivative, the Hakuryu, was fortunate for Oto. With the use of this jutsu, Naruto was able to physically cause his opponents to explode from a great distance by projecting a chakra-charged wind over his targets and then forcibly drawing that wind back from the unfortunate victims. Ever since the Battle of the Bloody Rain, when they first encountered that amazing jutsu, Kabuto had created a mask that all Oto shinobi had to wear to avoid breathing in Naruto's controlled wind. Never one to be deterred by a loss of this magnitude, Naruto decided to just use his katana for the moment, slicing through his opponents with his long-range kenjutsu technique, making them seem like mere pieces of glass. When Sasuke looked out to the horizon and saw the other armies of the Alliance moving toward his now vulnerable city with its broken gates, it was the last straw for him. He had to act quickly to avoid it being too late because he couldn't afford to allow them to enter his capital. Things were already too chaotic for them to enter. Kabuto, you're in charge of the protection of the walls and the space where the gates used to be. You have more than enough troops there in order to fight them back. Make use of the artillery we hid in anticipation for this battle. The Otokage instructed his second in command. Kabuto asked, wondering what his leader's plans were. As you command, my lord. What about you though? What will you be doing in the meantime? I'm going to take control of our forces in the center of the city. Suigetsu, Kimimaro and Jugo. You three are with me. Kabuto, I want you to win me some time in order to prepare my counter. The Alliance's forces from the sky and those approaching from outside cannot be allowed to join with those on the inside of the city. Do you understand me? Replied Sasuke. As he stood up to follow his master's instructions, Kabuto said, Yes, I understand, my lord. Now that Kabuto was gone, Sasuke and his elite guard moved toward the city's center. Above the city, Kuretsuchi, Mei, and Gaara still using Yoton tactics. Kuretsuchi and Mei were demolishing buildings and murdering Otogakure soldiers left and right as they bombarded the city. Since their jutsu was designed to melt away anything in their striking range, neither of them had attempted to hold back. They didn't really have to worry about their own defense either, because Gaara's sand would block any kunai jutsu or projectiles that came near them. Every attempt to shoot down his two fellow cages was repelled by the Kase cage, who was floating high above in the sky. But Gaara's concentration was limited, and he had to exert a great deal of effort to compensate for those two women whose jutsu required them to fly extremely close to the ground in order to be truly effective. For every man killed, two more followed to take his place on the wall, demonstrating Otogakure's overwhelming strength and manpower when it came to defending the city's walls. As more and more of Gaara's group's soldiers were shot down from the sky, it began to show on the battlefield. As the three cage turned to face it, the top of a tall building abruptly collapsed without any help from the Alliance's forces. The second.in command, Kabuto, was visible as the dust was blown away, accompanied by a few of his men. The strange machines concealed atop the tower, though, were what truly drew the three cages' attention. Gaara's eyes grew wide when he realized what those automatic kunai launchers were for. They were loaded and prepared to fire. Kabuto's men fired those devices at Mei and Kuretsuchi right away, leaving them with no time to examine them further. The first wave of kunai was instantly blocked by Gaara's controlled sand, but the Kase cage were shocked to learn that the force behind those kunai was much stronger than that of a kunai thrown by a human. The fact that they exploded upon impact with Gaara's sand barrier, likely because they were exploding tags that ignited upon launch, was another thing that took him by surprise. All in all, Gaara needed a lot more chakra than it had before to repel those attacks. In the midst of all of this, Kabuto was able to maneuver and leap toward two additional towers, where he exposed the identical defense mechanism to the one he had just released, right in front of Gaara and his group. Gaara nodded to the group and said, "Fall back, we need to temporarily distance ourselves from those. I won't be able to hold them back forever." Kuretsuchi and Mei both nodded. Kabuto grinned at this, realizing his plan had succeeded in its first attempt. With those three towers firing range and their exploding kunai launchers, he had just about created a safe haven for them inside that perimeter. It was fortunate that those devices were not revealed until the very last minute, or else the Alliance's initial wave would have destroyed them along with the rest of their long-range artillery. Kabuto made the decision to carry out the second part of his plan upon observing the approaching main external ground assault forces of the Alliance. Once more, he leapt from one of those towers and made his way to the center of the secure haven he had just constructed. Once again, he detonated a hidden mechanism to blow off the building's roof after landing on a tower that was slightly lower than the other three. During the opening moments of the battle, Gaara's group destroyed a long-range rock launcher instead of a mid-low-range kunai launcher. As Gaara watched Yugito and the 20,000 men under her command approach the city's entrance, he thought to himself, "Damn, he got us. We can't get close enough to hit that new machine," and he reorganized their troops to defend that position. At this rate the ground forces will be exterminated. The first rock was hurled towards the ground forces, startling the Kase cage out of his reverie. The rock shot off at high speed and exploded in midair above their allies, killing dozens of them in the process. Outside the city with Natsuki and Yugito, numerous Auto Shinobi were currently obstructing the path in front of the main entrance, making it difficult for the Alliance's main army to enter the city. The soldiers defending the area were gathering in front of the enormous opening where the main gates once stood. As Tsunade had requested, Yugito and Natsuki were gathering the troops, but they were both unprepared for the sight of a massive boulder flying over them. When Yugito saw the enormous rock flying over her men and then abruptly exploding, burying a few dozen of them beneath a shower of smaller rocks, she exclaimed, "What the hell was that?" Natsuki was just as shocked as Yugito and said, "Must have been the ammo from one of their long-range defense devices that Naruto's dragon spy spoke about. What the heck is going on up there?" "I don't know, they were supposed to destroy all of those damn things as soon as the battle started. What can we do? We are sitting ducks for that weapon if we stay parked here," Yugito replied. "We can't go back. Gaara and his group would be fine since they can fly and all, but Naru-kun will have no way out if we back out now," Natsuki screamed. "I know how you feel, believe me, B and A are still in there as well, but what can we do against such firepower?" Yugito replied. "I have an idea, but I need to speak with Matabi. Can you switch with her for a moment please?" Yugito replied to Natsuki. After giving a nod, the blonde shut her eyes. As the Nibi took control of Yugito's body, she said, "Hey there Na-chan, what's going on and what do you want from me? We need a way into that city but those damn auto ninja are in our way. We need a jutsu powerful enough to cut through their ranks, and I know the perfect one for that. I would have done it myself but I'm technically not a Biju anymore," Natsuki responded. "You want me to fire an Amari against those fools? It's a dangerous attack, I don't know, the friendly fire collateral damages could be tremendous. Did you think about this?" Natsuki replied to the Nibi. "What other choice do we have? We're vulnerable right now against their weapon as we stand here. Furthermore, Naru-kun and his allies are in danger as well. Your host too, has her special people inside that damn city," the blonde replied. "Precious people, you've changed Natsuki. The old you would have never concerned herself with those human you now call precious. However, since the partial unsealing, I too, have new perspective on this world so I shall assist you in this," Matabi said as she began to gather the Yuki around her. Natsuki yelled as she leapt back as Yugito's body was undergoing the Biju transformation. "Everyone, make way. Yugito is going to unleash the powers of the Nibi, so stay back, you've all been warned." Then the shinobi of every alliance leapt back, allowing the Nibi the room she needed to unleash her jutsu on the Auto armies. Nibi, fully transformed, gathered Yuki around her mouth in a spherical condensed form before aiming her head toward the entrance to the city, where they needed to pass. When the jutsu was released, all was dark. In the city's center, Naruto, and the only word to describe what was happening in the heart of a megacure was absolute chaos. The 10,000 ninja that arrived with Naruto, and they stood close to the hole that the Alliance's underground forces had dug. They were concealed amidst the debris and remnants of the structures that in his Biju form, had demolished. There was an enormous amount of pressure from the numerous Auto shinobi who were attempting to push them back. Just 3 warriors from the Alliance ventured out of formation into the enemy's capital's deadly streets. Another platoon that was attempting to enter their perimeter was just annihilated by Naruto. The men were completely destroyed by the blonde's undetectable genjutsu techniques. Naruto spoke up so that A and B could hear him. "There's no end to them, what the hell is going on with our aerial and ground assault?" A spoke to Killer B after responding to Naruto, saying, "No idea, but I don't plan to do this all day since my chakra reserves aren't bottomless as yours or my brother's are." From his transformed state, B responded from his higher ground vision, "Those fools just brought out some damn mid and long-ranged weapons from out of nowhere, bro. Our men are shot down like flies and the external forces are under heavy bombardment. No wonder we've been waiting all this time for our allies to link up with us without them showing up. They must have hidden some of their artillery weapons before the battle just in case," said Naruto. The Raikage yelled to his younger brother, "B, get your ass out there and go destroy those things before they get the chance to annihilate all of our allies." As B moved in the direction of the enemy's artillery, he replied, "Got it bro, I'm on my way there." Naruto was about to say, "Will you do me a service, B, and go look out for Yugito and Natsuki at the doors once you're done with there," when a bright light suddenly filled the room. When Naruto and B realized that the Biju Amari, the most powerful offensive jutsu a Biju could unleash, was the source of the phenomenon, their eyes grew wide. They both knew it was Yugito and Nibi who had done this when they noticed that neither of them had fired it and that Gaara was unable to enter his Biju state since Naruto had tightened his seal. As the light slowly faded, Naruto thought, "I really hope Na-chan is fine. Things aren't really turning out like we expected them to. Things must be getting complicated for them out there, if Yugito had to resort to the Amari." As B prepared to proceed to his new location, one of his tentacles unexpectedly caught fire in spite of the persistent rain. Their black color further indicated that this was not your typical fire. For those who were already aware of the dark flames known as the Amaterasu, Uchiha Sasuke was somewhere near the center of it all. The bee was in agony, moving erratically in an attempt to douse the flames, but it was powerless against Amaterasu's unquenchable blaze. Without wasting any time, Naruto emerged from beneath his genjutsu, took out his katana, and dashed toward the ferocious bee with the obvious goal of cutting. The Raikage cried out, "What the hell are you trying to do to my brother, Naruto?" as he noticed Naruto getting ready to swing his blade. "Cutting myself a slice of nicely cooked takoyaki. Why do you want some? Besides, it's either that or we let the flames entirely consume his whole body. Don't worry too much though, you better than anyone know that B will pull through this, and it's not like I'm cutting out one of his real human form's limb anyway," Naruto replied as he carefully removed the burning tentacle. With his massive Yuki reserves helping his burned body heal quickly, B roared, "Damn, that hurt like hell, thanks Naruto. Now, where's the little shit who did this to me?" Suigetsu, holding the Samahata, declared, Your enemy is me, Jinchuriki of the Hachibi. My sword will deal with your demonic powers. He materialized atop a tower. The Raikage had to abruptly jump back to avoid a barrage of projectiles as he was about to approach his brother. He examined them more closely and discovered that they were all formed of bone, most likely the fingers of a human hand. A looked in Kimimaro's direction, the direction the bones came from. It would have typically attempted to block the blow, but Jugo caused his entire arm to change into his cursed state, so he had to avoid another attack from the side instead. Before reactivating his Raiden no Yoroi, the Raikage thought to himself, a Shikatsumiku Keke Genkai user and someone with Orochimaru's Juinjutsu. I won't be able to get away that easily. Amidst the confusion, Naruto was able to conceal himself behind his Genjutsu once more. He was just about to launch a surprise attack on a newcomer when he noticed black flames suddenly enveloping his surroundings. The blonde had to use the Hireishin to escape, making himself known to those in his vicinity. Naruto said, "You finally came out to play with us." Sasuke, as he reappeared atop a tall tower and faced the Otokage, his adversary. Town center of Omegakure, the Auto leader himself entered the battlefield, causing a brief pause in the fighting between the soldiers of Otogakure and the members of the alliance. He appeared to be in his ultimate form as well, scanning the ninja crowd and Naruto's new location with his Ms activated. With the arrival of their master and leader, the defenders' side gained momentum and the break soon came to an end. The alliance's forces were not in a good position, lacking both reinforcement and a safe haven. They waited for Naruto, B, and A to give them new orders while continuing to fight the enemy's overwhelming force of soldiers while trying to hold their original formation. Regarding those three, they had all been paired with formidable foes, and their progress had been halted temporarily. Using the Raikage to oppose Jugo and Kimimaro. Jugo and Kimimaro both had their cursed forms activated, giving them immense chakra and a significant physical boost. Furthermore, they were collaborating quite effectively as a team. Jugo pursued close quarters, while Kimimaro shielded him from behind with strategic strikes derived from his dead bone pulse ancestry. They used their cursed powers to greatly increase their speed and their teamwork was perfect. The Raikage had to use all of his godlike speed against those two in order to avoid taking a critical hit from either of the two transformed creatures. Thankfully, he was still quicker than them, but their combined destructive force was at least equal to his own. Thus far, the fight has been fairly evenly balanced. Despite taking some hits because of their slower movement, the two have managed to stay upright, and the Raikage has been gradually draining his chakra reserves without defeating his tough opponents. However, A himself was the first to reach that conclusion. Drawing on his greater combat experience, he realized he needed to act quickly to avoid a disastrous outcome in the fight. Killer B opposing Suigetsu to B's surprise, the young swordsman was holding the Samahata once more. However, he was also perplexed as to how this man believed he could even stand a chance against him. The Yuki drain might be a little bothersome, but it wasn't nearly strong enough to overcome him. Recalling his arrogant demeanor upon his arrival, B questioned his opponent, "Yo, are you sure your master sent you to the right place, boy? The last holder of that sword couldn't even defeat me in my human form. What makes you think you could beat me in my Biju state?" Suigetsu answered, extending both arms sideways to feel the rain falling over them. While Kisame was a great swordsman and had a load more chakra than me, he didn't use his head in your fight against him. Your current state really seems powerful, but in the current situation, it will also doom you against someone like me. The swordsman with silver hair leapt from his position towards B, leaving him with little time to consider the words spoken by his opponent. In an attempt to capture and subdue Suigetsu, B snapped one of his tentacles in response to his instinct. He briefly believed he had succeeded when he made contact, but Suigetsu's body burst into midair in a manner akin to that of a water clone. "Didn't the 8th blade of Kiri tell you how our fight went?" Suigetsu asked, appearing behind B and instantly forming a new body before using the Samahata to slay the enormous octopus. Though it did so a little more slowly than usual, his flesh wound began to heal. In an attempt to buy some time, B responded, "8th blade of Kiri? Who the hell are you talking about, yo?" Although that hit wasn't powerful enough to seriously harm him, a few more like it would cause even him to become uncomfortable. The capacity of Biju, or Jinchuriki like him, to quickly channel their vast stores of Yuki into self. Healing was what gave them their exceptional resilience. Those attacks with the Samahata taxed him twice over, harming his body and depleting his reserves of regeneration. I defied him as a swordsman and, while he had no reason to accept, he did and beat me fair and square. That was a surprise attack that decided the outcome of our match. That's the one you were all calling K's no Kami, the only one so far to have beaten me. Suigetsu told him, not missing the twitch in B's eyes when Naruto's moniker came out. B thought, remembering that he had skipped the debriefing from Naruto's mission to AIM. Damn it, I knew I should have stayed to that council meeting instead of going off to schedule my next concert. Naruto opposing Sasuke. Naruto knew Sasuke could track him by using the disruption in the rain's flow, so he didn't bother reactivating his genjutsu's movement. Oddly enough, he also noticed that Sasuke's equipment was missing an air filtering mask. That could only indicate that he had either discovered a way to negate Naruto's jutsu or that he was too conceited to use the device. In any case, Naruto made the decision to move first and launched a preemptive strike, executing hand signals incredibly quickly. Futon. Hikuge! Naruto cried out, hurling a powerful gust of wind in the direction of his rival. The Uchiha gave him a smug smile and he was shocked to see Sasuke still standing where he was. As the wind wave passed over Sasuke's position, it immediately caught fire, exposing a sort of Kaiden shield covering him that rendered Naruto's Futon jutsu ineffective. Naruto narrowed his eyes at this counter and tried to come up with a new strategy in his head. Sasuke boasted as the enormous humanoid shadow that was shielding him began to move and a bow suddenly appeared in its hands. What's the matter? Your puny jutsu failed to reach me, Dobi. Your offensive powers are nothing in comparison to Susanoo, my ultimate defense. That being said, Susanoo can be used for offense as well, he said. The giant used its bow to shoot an arrow at Naruto, giving him no time to get ready. As soon as Naruto moved to throw a Hiraishin Kunai aside, another arrow flew in the direction of his new location. Naruto chose to alter his trajectory's momentum since he was out of time to perform another Hiraishin move. He yelled, Senpo! Ryu no Hata, as he transformed into a dragon hybrid with two wings growing out of his back, dodging the second arrow that Sasuke had just shot at him. Naruto thought to himself, any wind-based attack will be nullified thanks to his fire defense. Let's try to test its physical resistance. He then leapt out again to avoid another arrow. He knew where to shoot his second arrow by tracking my Hiraishin Kunai. That was pretty clever, I guess. Now, what can I do to reach him? He called forth another Hiraishin Kunai and performed hand gestures for the Kage Kunai no Jutsu while still in the air. Then, having up until now only used one Kunai for his movements, he began to literally cover the entire battlefield with his Hiraishin markers as a defense against Sasuke, anticipating his next move. After finishing his preparations, Naruto made a reappearance in front of Sasuke and used his eyes to channel chakra in order to activate his Sage Dragon Eyes, or Ryugan, which gave him the ability to see quickly moving objects. Naruto declared as he sent chakra to his dragon wings to strengthen them in preparation for his next move. Let's see how absolute your defense really is then, shall we? My dragons are born in and breathe out fire. There is no way you can burn my dragon parts. The blonde exclaimed, Senpo! Show Ryuha! As he reappeared a short distance behind Sasuke. In a split second, there was a loud cracking noise and a visible damage to a portion of Sasuke's Susanoo due to the contact with Naruto's new jutsu. Naruto smirked and said, so much for your invincible armor, Otokage-sama. Sasuke was the one who lost faith in himself this time around as he witnessed his ultimate defense gradually reforming at the expense of additional chakra. But Naruto would not let him rest, employing the same jutsu repeatedly while utilizing all of the Hiraishin markers and traveling at the speed of a god to traverse the battlefield. In the midst of it all, Sasuke stood defenseless against the blonde's onslaught of attacks on his armor from every direction. When Naruto eventually came to a stop and realized what he had done, the Susanoo was all but destroyed. The bow wielding arms were gone, and the majority of the upper torso was also damaged. Naruto decided not to target the head since it was the only part of the body that was safe. Sasuke was enraged and was using all of his chakra to maintain his defense, but he knew that Naruto would eventually wear it down. Sasuke yelled at his men, who had been keeping a safe distance from the fighting, what are you waiting for, you idiots? Remove his damn kunai from the field. On the battlefield, the Zetsu clones and his mind controlled drones advanced right away in an attempt to follow their master, but Naruto anticipated this once more and launched a counterattack. You truly battle like a coward, Sasuke. To win without danger is not to be honored. Naruto uttered these words while directing a great deal of chakra into his wings in preparation for another jutsu. Senpo! Hyaku Ryuha! He exclaimed before vanishing in a flash of white light. Unlike his prior method, this one allowed him to move in a random manner between markers without stopping until he made 100 jumps. Naruto unleashed the enhanced form of his most recent creation, leaving the 1,000 men who had attempted to enter the battlefield with no chance of survival. Sasuke was not spared as the dragon hybrid sage ripped through everything in his path. Naruto was able to apply the jutsu to deal the final hits necessary to eliminate Sasuke's ultimate defense. The entire Omegakure battlefield came to a standstill. There was silence as all eyes focused on Uzumaki Naruto, who was waiting for Uchiha Sasuke, ready to slay with his katana pressed against his opponent's throat. As his arm with the katana began to move, Naruto uttered the words, "With your death, the war will finally be over, Sasuke." But right then and there, an explosion rocked the whole vicinity where they were standing. In order to avoid getting caught in the explosion, Naruto had to jump to one of his markers. An old friend was standing on the opposite side of the battlefield when the dust settled. There Tobi was, cradling a shakily upright Sasuke. Naruto uttered the words, "Akatsuki," while cursing his own poor judgment for allowing Sasuke to live longer. Tobi remained silent, letting Sasuke get back up on his own. Sasuke had nearly depleted his chakra reserves and had all the trouble in the world to stand on his own. In addition, he had to close his eyes to lessen the level of pain he was experiencing ever since his near-death experience because he felt like something odd was happening to them. When he eventually opened his eyes again, he saw that everyone was staring at him and was shocked that he had just discovered the Rinnegan, the ultimate Dujutsu. He was as surprised as the audience when he eventually noticed his reflection in a nearby puddle of water, and he even allowed a tired smile to spread across his face. Then, with his back to Tobi, he turned to face the still shocked Naruto. As Sasuke began to speak, an arm abruptly pierced his ribcage from behind. "What took you so long, Tobi? I don't know how, but I got this new power. I have no more chakra, so I order you to." As Tobi withdrew his hand from Sasuke's corpse and removed his mask, revealing the face of an older-looking Sasuke with the M's in one eye and the Rinnegan in the other, he said, "I take orders from no one, no even you, my other self." Sasuke struggled to say, "Who? Why?" as he sensed his life force vanishing. "I am you, the you from an alternate future reality. In my own original space-time, I was about to lose against him again, so I used an ultimate jutsu with the Rinnegan and M's in order to travel back in time and erase his existence before he got a chance to become powerful again," he said while observing Naruto, who was listening to his story as well. "I managed with that jutsu to travel back to the day before his birth, however, it was not without a cost. I lost my Rinnegan in the process and only succeeded in preventing his parents from sealing a part of their chakra in his body. I thought this would have been enough to hold back his growth as a ninja, since in my universe, even with his parents sealed in him, until almost the end of the war, he was a useless orange-wearing idiot that shouted over the rooftops that he would surely one day become the Hokage. Without them to protect him against the beast he had sealed in him, he was not supposed to become stronger." Tobi took a break again, as he started to channel medical chakra to his hands and bring them near Sasuke's eyes. "The recoil from using the time-traveling jutsu and my fight against his damn parents took a lot of me and forced me into hiding for a very long time. I never suspected that by my actions against his parents, this would trigger him meeting and bonding with the beast inside him to such an extent that he would become an even greater threat to me in this universe than he ever was in the previous one. To this day, I still don't know how the Sharingan naturally evolves into the Rinnegan, however, I tried to use the ones I stole from Nagato, his cousin. This just isn't the same and I can't use the full extent of my powers with them, so I waited and waited for you to become stronger and finally activate those eyes. Now that you did, I don't need to play this ridiculous Tobi or Madara part any longer." The eyes that were left and encased another in a scroll, the other in his own body. Without any delay, he disposed of the body of his previous identity and began directing chakra towards his recently obtained Rinnegan eye. The unfortunate victims on the battlefield halted their activities as the effects of Sasuke's Koto Amatsukami wore off and the caster died, leaving them to wonder where they were and what was going on. As the Alliance's forces realized how their opponent was doing, the clones stopped attacking and stayed motionless as well. Kimimaro, Jugo, Suigetsu, and Kabuto experienced the same thing. They were totally unprepared for their leader's passing. Now, everyone was interested in learning what would happen next between Naruto and this enigmatic future Sasuke. Finally, we find ourselves face to face again, both at the peak of our powers. I've seen you fight my younger self and I know you didn't even use 1/3 of your true powers. I originally planned to kill you before you could become a threat to me again, but fate has deemed that we would face each other again in this lifetime. Granted, you weren't this powerful nor did you use all those wind-based moves in my reality. I'll show you how the true Uchiha Sasuke fights, however, I don't want anyone to jump in and interfere with this fight, so brace yourself and hold on a moment," Sasuke concluded. He raised himself off the ground and began to float in the sky, climbing higher and closer to the tower's center as he did so by using his gravitational powers. Conan's eyes widened at the sight from her position on the outer battlefield, and she used her radio emitter to alert all of the Alliance's forces to what was about to happen. To all Alliance's personnel, the enemy is going to use a devastating detonating jutsu that will vaporize the better part of the city. I repeat, imminent massive explosion in the center of the city. Fall back immediately, you won't survive the blast. I repeat, full retreat now, she screamed into her radio transmitter. When the city defenders and the Alliance's soldiers heard her broadcast, it was an absolute mess. Without delay, Gaara's team made every effort to evacuate as many people as they could. With their forces already outside the walls, Natsuki and Yugito ordered a complete withdrawal, with some former auto-converted troops following them. The people who entered the city by the underground route posed the real issue. Now that they were inside, there was no way out and no time to get to the walls. Seeing no other option, they made another attempt to enter the sewers while hoping they wouldn't be discovered alive beneath the city's ruins. Feeling accountable for their destiny, Naruto was about to try something when it materialized behind him, placing a hand on his shoulder. We came here knowing the risks, Naruto. Let me and B worry about our troops' safety, you just stay focused on this guy. If there is one person who can defeat him, it's you and only you. If what he said is true, you already beat him once in the past, future, whatever. Do your best, we believe in you. As stated prior to joining forces with B. When Sasuke had enough chakra and reached his ideal height, he stopped moving, spread his arms wide, and turned to face Naruto once more. Everything turned white, and he yelled, "Too late, Shinra Tensei." A megacure. The city's periphery, those who had the good fortune to leave the city before Sasuke's jutsu's blinding light faded, attempted to reassemble with their friends. The majority of the Zetsu clone's army was destroyed by the Shinra Tensei, and since they had no self-preservation instinct, they made no attempt to flee the city when chaos struck. The Koto Amatsukami. Programmed individuals were clueless, oblivious to the circumstances surrounding their arrival on the battlefield. In contrast, it took the Alliance's main forces very little time to reorganize their formations, and Gaara's remaining forces quickly joined them. Yugito, in her regular form once more, and Natsuki were already in command. Gaara attempted to fly over the city to assess the extent of the damage, but he had to leave Mei and Kuretsuchi in charge of getting their group to safety. With the enemy encircling him, Otogakure's second in command, Kabuto, was forced to surrender. Not that he would have kept serving this new Sasuke, since the bastard had been using them covertly for who knows how long and had just attempted to kill them all with his final jutsu. He was immediately taken to a safer area and placed under physical and mental restraint until further notice. After seeing how the battle turned out, Tsunade quickly called upon Katsuyu, the boss of the slug summoning. The sheer number of injured patients the medics had to tend to was overwhelming, so they were relieved when Tsunade's slugs showed up. All the blonde Hokage could hope for was the well-being of her knucklehead surrogate son. Overlooking the city, Gaara the Cage was using a small amount of controlled sand to help him float in the sky. There was no trace of the former Omegakure city due to the severe damage inflicted upon it. Where houses and tall towers once stood only moments before, now there were only ruins and rubble. Gaara noticed that Naruto appeared to be unharmed as he neared the ground, and Sasuke was similarly unharmed. In the middle of the city, they were both staring at the other. When Gaara noticed that nobody was there, she made the decision to look for the other participants in the underground expedition. When he finally located the hole from which they had emerged, he was shocked to discover a partially burned Killer Bee, still in his Biju state, covering the opening with his body. The Raikage, the brother of the Jinchuriki, was with him as well, attempting to store the debris that was encasing his brother's body. It appeared as though they absorbed the blast from Sasuke's jutsu using Bee's form. It took a lot of Bee to maintain the strength behind the Shinra Tensei in an effort to conceal their group's retreat, even though he did not sustain any critical injuries. The explosion carried many dead bodies, mostly those of Otogakure's soldiers. Along with it, Gaara searched for the bodies of Kimimaro, Jugo, and Suigetsu, the higher staff members of Sasuke's previous army, but was unable to locate them. Gaara concluded his recon mission and took off once more, this time leaving the city to go and tell the other Cage of the whereabouts and status of their precious people. If it were true that Naruto, A, and B were still alive, people from Kumo and Konoha would probably be happy. Naruto was now left to handle the remaining tasks, serving as the Alliance's lone hope against the Uchiha's threat. Ground Zero, starring Sasuke and Naruto. The two of them were fighting in an empty, plain field because the Shinra Tensei had pushed everything in their immediate vicinity, a mile away. The outcome of this decisive conflict would determine the fate of the elemental nations. Either way, the end was almost here. Standing on one side, dressed in white, was Uzumaki Naruto, the champion of light. The avatar of the darkness, Uchiha Sasuke, was on the other side dressed in black. Just as Gaara had just done, Naruto peered for A and B out of the corner of his eye. The fact that they were both still breathing and somewhat injured surprised him. This character, Uchiha Sasuke, who appeared to be from a future version of this world, was now the center of his attention. The story the man told him was still vivid in his memory. Everything in his life, from the terrible beginnings of his childhood to the moment he discovered love, had resulted from the deeds of that man. If Sasuke's claims are accurate, he ought to have met with both of his parents at the time he tampered with the Shiki fusion seal that was keeping Natsuki at bay. He was disappointed to hear that he had missed the opportunity to meet Minato and Kushina during this lifetime, but sadly, that had never occurred. Lost in his thoughts, he realized something else. That man's manipulation of the timeline also indirectly led to his meeting and subsequent bonding with Natsuki. Since he already felt like the happiest man on earth to have found such a mate, Naruto didn't know or want to know if he had had another chance for love in that alternate universe where he and Natsuki weren't this close. With his Ryugan activated and his wings spread, the blonde remained in his dragon sage form. All the other Hiraishin kunai had been blown away, leaving only the one he had just used to escape the blast. Naruto made the decision to try the same tactic he had just employed in his previous battle with Sasuke. Using hand signals, he once more marked the battlefield in advance of his strike. Senpo. Sho Ryu Ha, he exclaimed as he charged in the direction of his adversary. But Sasuke did more than just stand there and count on his shield. He used his own unique brand of space-time ninjutsu. The Uchiha vanished momentarily, then reappeared in Naruto's path a moment later. Then, with a perfectly timed high kick, the raven-haired warrior caught the blonde and kicked him out. Even though everything occurred in less than a millisecond, to those two, the speed was nearly normal. Naruto was taken aback despite his jutsu having just been countered and him taking a hard blow at full speed. Sasuke grinned and said, "Did you really think that it would be as easy as it was against my younger counterpart? Let me remind you that you aren't the first one to have used the Hiraishin against me in a fight. I've studied that jutsu and came up with my own version of it. You won't be able to reach me with such pitiful attempts." He then channeled chakra to his body and summoned his own version of the Susanoo. This one carried a sword in its free hand in addition to the small crossbow it already carried. However, the blazing black flames covering its entire body were what really made it dangerous. These dark flames from the fabled Amaterasu were not shown in the previous version, which only featured a few purple ones. Sasuke launched an attack and began shooting arrows covered in those dark flames toward Naruto without waiting for his opponent to gather himself. Once again, the blonde was spared from the first arrow by the numerous Hiraishin markers scattered throughout the field. But this Susanoo could shoot arrows at him all the time, so he had to keep dodging for a while, which made it difficult for him to focus on organizing his forces to counter his opponent. Damn, his attacks are much faster than with the previous version of that jutsu. Gotta concentrate one hit of that attack and I'm dead. His first counter may have surprised me, but I'm still faster than him. All I have to do is to remain focused and I'll be alright. If only I could use my genjutsu skills against him. That's the one thing he has no counter against, but that damn rain is making it easy for him to follow me. Naruto thought about this while avoiding a second flaming arrow that was headed his way. But as he was about to execute the move, his eyes widened as he at last came up with a counter that might actually work against Sasuke. As he watched the blonde duck another arrow, Sasuke taunted, "What's the matter, Dobi? Is running away all you can do?" Sasuke could continue for a long time without worrying about his reserves because he possessed a lot more chakra than he did when he was younger. With the leaders of the alliance after Gaara informed his fellow Kage about the conditions inside the destroyed city of Omegakure, they made the decision to get closer so they could support Naruto in the event that he ever needed it. Now that the situation outside the walls was under control, they also dispatched Konan and Yugito to the underground tunnels to help rescue anyone who remained trapped there. Only Tsunade, Mei, Kuretsuchi, Gaara, and Natsuki's warriors were permitted to enter the area. Zabuza, the Mist Demon, and Sharingan no Kakashi from the Leaf, along with a few other elite shinobi, were left in charge of tidying up. The group saw a sight they would never forget as they arrived at the city's walls. Sasuke's upgraded Susanoo was launching fiery arrows at Naruto non-stop while he was deftly dodging them with his Hiraishin jutsu. They were all aware that none of them had what it took to enter the battle, which was above Kage level. However, observing how the fight was going, they were aware from past encounters that Sasuke had the upper hand and was going on the attack. and Naruto was currently under duress. Everyone had seen Naruto's strength at some point in their lives, and watching the blonde guy battle his opponent was truly amazing. Tsunade, who knew better than to allow the sentimental redhead divert Naruto from the most significant battle of his life, stopped Natsuki from getting any closer. Having no other option, the group remained there and kept watching the battle from a distance while hoping that Naruto would win. Returning with Naruto trying to get some space between them, Naruto quickly stepped back from Sasuke and made the familiar hand gestures before slamming his right hand into the ground. He exclaimed, "Ninpo! Kachiyose no Jutsu!" as a thick cloud of smoke appeared. A few moments afterward, the Dragon King Ruo materialized beside him. Since all the other dragons had been called in for the aerial strike team, he was the only one of Naruto's that had not yet joined the battle. However, Ruo was unique and could only function in tandem with Naruto, the summoner of the true contract. As he stared at the abandoned ruins of a megacure, the dragon leader exclaimed, "What have you called me for, Naruto? Most of my subjects have already gone back home and told me that you and your allies were about to win this war." That's partially true, the only one left to beat is that guy. However, he uses some nasty fire-based attacks with the black flames of Amaterasu. You're the only one who could withstand those, that's the reason why I summoned you. Naruto responded as he pointed to Sasuke. He called another jutsu after performing some new hand gestures. With a calm announcement, Naruto vanished from Sasuke's line of sight and said, "Futon. Kyoka Suigetsu." The rain streaming around the blonde helped the Uchiha to discern the general shape of Naruto's body. Naruto then began speaking with Ruo, but Sasuke was unable to read the blonde's lips with his Sharingan in this state, so he was unaware of what they were talking about. Sasuke was taken aback when the black dragon abruptly took off and began hurling black fireballs in the direction of his target. He became so disoriented that he lost all sense of where Naruto was. Sasuke made an unsuccessful attempt to look around him since the blonde had actually taken advantage of the situation to vanish. He fired arrows at Ruo using his Susanoo, but the elder dragon easily evaded the attacks because it had the same Ryugan eyes as Naruto. Moreover, as the only dragon capable of breathing dark flames, the Amaterasu was powerless against him. Suddenly rising higher in the sky, Ruo was able to escape Sasuke's firing range. As soon as he reached the safe area, he began to unleash powerful fireballs on the Uchiha, further destroying the already severely damaged Omegakure. Because he was stuck on the ground as long as his Susanoo was activated, Sasuke cursed. He had no choice but to leap out of the way as the Dragon King's black flames approached, momentarily cutting off his ultimate defense jutsu. No human was immune to those flames. While he could manage and put out his own, he had no control over flames coming from outside sources. Sasuke felt the wind output increase immediately after the Susanoo was disabled. A moment later, he was in excruciating pain as something pierced his back, directly next to his shoulder. Sasuke turned his head back and followed the attack to a small shadow near the shattered remnants of the former cage tower. More than a mile away from him, this was the ideal location for Naruto to hide out where the rain couldn't get to him. Futon. Kamishini no Yari. Naruto pointed his katana at Sasuke while disclosing who he was. Blood was seen dribbling from one corner of the Uchiha's mouth as he collapsed to the ground, most likely from internal bleeding. Without wasting any time, Naruto used the Hiraishin to move himself on top of Ruo. The Dragon King and his summoner then unleashed a new jutsu on their fallen foe. Naruto exclaimed, "Futon! Dai Tenka Furyu Endan," as he and Ruo launched a combined attack powered by his partner's Wind Dragon Jutsu and his partner's Black Flames. Their combined jutsu resulted in a black wind dragon that was blazing and came crashing down on a motionless Sasuke. The Uchiha was unable to escape because he was too overcome with pain to use his space-time jutsu. As the torrent of dark flames struck him, he put his hand to his bleeding mouth. As Naruto's strike hit the ground, it released a lot of smoke, and since Sasuke had no time to flee, he was hoping that his final effort would be sufficient. In contrast to Amaterasu, the flames dissipated quite rapidly and lacked the capacity to burn for days without a suitable fuel source. Naruto was taken aback upon clearing the area to discover the charred remains of Manda, the boss of the snake summoning contract and the one creature Anko had never attempted to call forth. The Snake Lord succumbed to the full extent of his injuries from Naruto's jutsu, coiled on himself, in the middle of his sentence. "How dare you use me like this, Uchiha? You will pay for this." After Manda passed away, a portion of him rolled off to reveal Sasuke and the Six Shadows, who were shielded from Naruto's technique by the multiple layers of burnt flesh on Manda. The blonde's eyes grew wide as he noticed the Rinnegan in their gaze, but what startled him the most was their identification, Jiraiya, Itachi, Danzo, Orochimaru, Kisame, and Nagato were standing in front of him. Naruto was aware that Sasuke was carrying Itachi and Danzo's bodies due to reports of the infiltration mission in AIM. Kisame and Orochimaru's presence wasn't entirely unexpected either. While facing an opponent with the renowned eyes of the Sage of the Six Paths was not unfamiliar to him, he would never have imagined himself opposing his own teacher. Moreover, he had no intention of facing his cousin Nagato once more. All in all, Sasuke had put together a very lethal group of people to form his paths. One thing is certain, from my first fight with Nagato, I can tell that they are all already dead, feel no pain and have no emotions whatsoever. They are controlled using the Rinnegan and share a common vision field. I'll have to disable that link between them, if I am to remain in this game, as there is no way I could face those six at the same time. Naruto was thinking from atop Ruo. Alongside the observer, Tsunade couldn't contain her tears as she saw Jiraiya again. Of course, she was aware of the Rinnegan and how its wielder could command the dead to carry out his wishes. Jiraiya, to see you again like this. She felt hurt that the Toad Sage was being used in this way, as a mindless, empty vessel. Natsuki had to be restrained by Gaara and his sand, otherwise she would have entered the battle. Leave me alone, you cowards, he needs my help. It was too much for her to see all those S-ranked shinobi teamed up against her mate. Despite his immense strength, it was unfair for him to take on these opponents by himself, especially with 4 other Kages present to witness the fight. The Kage were embarrassed to acknowledge that, at the moment, their only option for helping Naruto was to stay out of his fight. The blonde would be unable to use his most devastating jutsu with Natsuki or their presence on the field, and those were currently the only ways to take down Sasuke. Alongside Naruto, the drones wasted no time in launching an assault on the blonde and his dragon. Using the Kusanagi that Orochimaru had summoned, he attempted to pierce Ruo, but the dragon quickly avoided it because of his Ryugan eyes. Itachi used a combo attack with Danzo, firing a Gokakyu while Danzo infused his Shinku Taigoku into it to increase its power. While the dragon took the massive fireball head on and avoided injury because he was immune to fire, Naruto had to leap off Ruo. Naruto was drawn toward the ground by Nagato's Bansho Tenin as soon as he released his summon. The blonde chose to dash off in the direction of the nearest Hiraishin marker he had on the ground because it would have been too dangerous to approach Nagato up close. Regretfully, the moment he surfaced again, the ground beneath him began to descend, indicating Jiraiya's infamous Yomi Numa trap. When Kisame suddenly materialized and attempted to behead Naruto with the Samahata that Suigetsu had left on the field after AIM was destroyed by the explosion, Naruto hardly had time to register what was happening around him. With a swift movement, Ruo got Naruto out of the swamp jutsu in time to dodge Kisame's blow, and without turning around, they shot skyward. That was extremely close. A single second later, Jiraiya and Kisame's combined attack would have resulted in the blonde's head loss. Are you alright, Naruto? This is your former sensei, will you be able to fight against him and really give it your all? Ruo asked the blonde. Don't worry, I'm not scared to face him right now. Quite the opposite, in fact, it is my duty as his student to not let the Uchiha use him that way. I'm not even sure if there's still a part of his soul in that body down there. The last time I faced the Six Paths, they were like soulless drones, replied Naruto. Remembering their first encounter with the Paths, the Dragon King remarked, very well, how do you want to do this? Even you can't fight them all on your own, we need a solid plan to win this. There is only one path left, I have one last jutsu I can use against them that will ensure our victory. The reason why I didn't use it up until now is because I'll only have one shot at it before my chakra reserves are completely depleted. Ruo was told by Naruto. His summoner inquired, what can I do to help you? I need to stand still for a definite amount of time while I channel my chakra for that jutsu. I'll need to stay concealed within my genjutsu field for that, but with the rain it's easy for them to track me. We need to find a way to temporarily stop the rain. I don't suppose you can do something like this? Said Naruto. Ruo said, I can't. Water is not really my field of expertise, but I know the one for this. Before calling forth Hiranmaru, another well-known dragon, in reverse. After being briefly briefed on his mission, the ice dragon wasted no time in rising higher in the sky above them. Sasuke had healed himself from the cut he had earlier sustained during all of this. He was incensed that Naruto had succeeded in escaping once more, that even the Six Paths couldn't bring him to an end. Just as everyone was glancing up at the sky to see what Naruto would do next, something happened. The rain stopped right away, and the air felt much colder. For the rain to stop in such a manner was unprecedented in AIM and had not occurred in hundreds of years. The odd thing is that the snow didn't fall inside the city, rather, it fell outside of it. Sasuke's eyes expanded upon seeing this. He knew it had to be Naruto's creation, which meant the blonde was already nearby, concealed in his genjutsu field. Ruo set off a massive fireball that compelled Sasuke and his paths to advance toward the city's center. It was now impossible for the 7 pairs of Sharingan and Rinnegan to find Naruto, as they were searching for even the smallest movement from him in the absence of rain. After avoiding Ruo's fireball, Sasuke and his paths leapt to the center of where Naruto suddenly appeared and said, "This is the end, Sasuke." On the ground, Fuinjutsu markings began to appear around them in a circle that was 100 meters wide. Time stopped inside the field Naruto had just created, and he shouted, "Uzumaki Zenjutsu. Hifujin no Jutsu," before becoming one with the wind once more. Walls of a megatier city like the rain that stopped all around them. The noise from within the city abruptly stopped as a result of Naruto and Sasuke's constant use of more powerful ninjutsu. When Naruto used his jutsu, not even the sound of the wind blowing through the abandoned city could be heard. The Cage were taken aback by this strange occurrence. The majority of them had read about Naruto's fight in front of Sanagakure against Nagato, the other Rinnegan wielder. Seeing it with their own eyes was truly something else, even though they had heard he possessed an ultimate technique that even surpassed the Hiraishin. When A and Killer B arrived, they were all startled out of their reverie because it was the Raikage who had questioned Tsunade. "Tsunade, is that the Hifujin?" After being healed, B returned to his human form but was now quite exhausted from using Yuki excessively and confronting the Shinra Tensei head-on. The blonde answered without taking her eyes off the battlefield, "I don't really know, I have only heard vague descriptions of that technique from him. This is my first time seeing it, and even for Natsuki, who was not there at that time, it's a first as well." As promised, Naruto's partner and the person who taught him the most, including the abilities related to his wind bloodline, Natsuki, was enthralled. Even the redhead was amazed by Naruto's brilliant mind when it came to creating jutsus, as he had a millennium of experience using the bloodline she gave him. Since she had never had anyone to compare to her rival or equal, she had never felt the need to advance her abilities beyond what she taught Naruto. The leaders of the alliance were aware that they were present for a battle that would define this timeline. This fight would usher in a new era for the shinobi community, much as the one between Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha signaled a new beginning. Alongside Naruto vanished from inside the circle once more as soon as the Fuinjutsu markings started to show on the ground. The 6 paths' bodies were surrounded by a sudden gust of condensed wind that caused them to instantly leap away in 6 different directions before everything fell silent. They continued to search with their eyes, but were unable to find the blonde. Sasuke and the 6 of them were the only people inside that boundary, even with the Rinnegan. Sasuke, the one in charge of the 6 paths, was taken aback by the fact that their 5 senses appeared to be failing them. An unidentified force attacked the 6 paths' bodies at the same moment. The most puzzling thing was that they were only able to feel their own wounds from this unidentified source, which could only indicate that it was Naruto still practicing his genjutsu moves. It was as though time had stopped inside the field because they were unable to identify the attack through sight, sound, smell, or feeling. The wind was constantly tearing the bodies of the 6 paths into tiny fragments, which was the only sign of Naruto's presence. Naruto and Sasuke were soon the only 2 people still inside the time trap. As soon as the Uchiha saw the blonde destroying the paths, he used his own space-time technique to move out of phase and avoid being attacked by Naruto once more. But when he attempted to leave Naruto's field, he encountered an obstacle. His phase-shifting jutsu failed when he reached the edge of the field, allowing Naruto to quickly locate him and push him back toward the center. Naruto recalled a discussion he had with Konan regarding Toba's skills and her initial strategy to battle the man. Flashback. A week following the AIM espionage mission. Just now, Naruto, Kurenai, and Konan had concluded their mission's debriefing in a megacure. They remained in River Country, which Gaara and his army had recently retaken from Odogakure. They temporarily rented rooms in a small hotel because they would soon be redeployed. While Konan and Naruto were still talking about what had happened in a megacure, Kurenai had fallen asleep. "Konan, what can you tell me about that Tobi or Madara guy?" asked Naruto. "Not much, I'm afraid. He mostly talked with Nagato and I've never even seen his face. He called himself Uchiha Madara, one of the 2 leaders of the founding clans from Konohagakure." Konan responded. "Do you know about his abilities? I'm mostly interested in that space-time jutsu of his. It seems more versatile than the one my father created, even though it's quite slower. I'll need to find a way around it, if we are to one day face each other on the battlefield." Naruto clarified. "Before you came to save me, I originally planned to defeat him using my observation of his phase-shifting jutsu. Once he launches this move, he cannot be harmed for as long as he keeps that jutsu active. However, for him to harm you, he needs to phase back into our plane of existence. That's the moment where he is vulnerable. From what Nagato and I were able to assess, he can keep the jutsu up for about 5 minutes at best. My first plan was to trap him in a containment field with enough exploding tags for 5 full minutes of detonations. Disclosed to him her previous strategy, Tobi would prevail. Rather than sleep like Konan and Kurenai did, Naruto mused aloud as he made his way outside the hotel toward a training ground. 5 minutes. Flashback termination. Everything happened so quickly when Naruto used the Hyfugen against Nagato for the first time because he had already vanquished each of the 6 paths on his own. When Naruto first created the jutsu, it wasn't intended to be used for such a long time. But at that moment, he had just broken the seal on Natsuki and was still working to fully control his enormous reserves of Yuki. He had to put in a lot of work and patience, but eventually he was able to prolong the duration of his jutsu. Sasuke attempted to exit the field 3 times in total, but each time he did, he ran into Naruto's invisible barrier. With every missed opportunity, Naruto had been able to severely hurt his opponent. Sasuke even attempted to phase back inside the field after his second attempt failed, hoping to counter Naruto's wind mode and launch a Kaden jutsu around him. That also failed horribly, as the Uchiha sustained another injury before he could even channel chakra to his lungs while Naruto was already on him. Naruto had kept his field occupied for 5 minutes, and it had been 4 minutes since Sasuke's last appearance. This was the blonde's best training result to date, but he knew he had to keep trying. For his part, Sasuke had already taken multiple serious blows to the body, and the next one would most likely kill him as well. Now, it was a race against time for both of them. If Naruto gave up and broke his containment field first, Sasuke would have one last chance to kill the blonde because it would be too exhausted to fight back, or the Uchiha could escape with serious injuries but still be able to live to fight another day. However, Naruto would be the one to kill his opponent while his force field was still active if Sasuke were to phase back in first, using up his 5 minutes of jutsu. Alongside the cage, B and Natsuki have found it extremely difficult to follow the battle between Naruto and Sasuke ever since it reached the point where Naruto unleashed his Hyfugen. They perceived the field as being entirely empty after witnessing the paths being vanquished by an unseen force. The only times that didn't apply were when Sasuke made 3 attempts to break free from the circle and when he tried to phase back in and perform a jutsu. Apart from that, all they could get out of that altercation was total silence. When Tsunade saw that Jiraiya's body had stopped moving, she felt both sad and relieved. Now that they knew this was for the best, she and Natsuki prayed for Naruto to return safely. The highest-ranking officers from their army had joined them. Tsunade's side now included Kakashi, Guy, Anko, Kurenai, Karen, and Konan from the Leaf. Along with Samui and her group from Kumogakure, Yugito, Darui, and C had also joined the Raikage and B. The majority of those formidable fighters had come to see Naruto's battle come to an end. Just beyond the city walls of Omegakure, the snow abruptly stopped falling, only for the rain to begin falling again. The sounds of the rain hitting the ground and the wind blowing were audible from inside the city as well. This could only indicate that, for better or worse, a winner had been determined and the fight was over. City's center, the bodies of Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto were arranged in the middle of the destroyed city of Omegakure, with rain pouring down upon them. Naruto had long since returned to their realm after using up all of his chakra reserves to summon dragons. The rain suddenly returned, and Natsuki was the first to arrive on the scene. She had escaped Gaara's shackles when the cage momentarily lost concentration. The vixen was absolutely terrified upon seeing Naruto's motionless corpse lying on the ground. When she finally got to him, she discovered that he was only unconscious but still breathing. She embraced her partner with tears of joy streaming down her face. He suffered a serious injury directly above his heart, but with the right care, it wasn't life-threatening, and he would recover. All the other onlookers soon joined them, astounded by the destruction the battle between Sasuke and Naruto had caused to the city. Naruto was soon stabilized by Tsunade, who also bandaged him so Natsuki could take him back to their house. Subsequently, she proceeded to witness Jiraiya's decapitated form, while Konan attended to Nagato's. Both had managed to remain mostly intact, even after absorbing Naruto's strongest jutsu. Probably Naruto's farewell fidelity to either his late master or his cousin. When compared to the remains of Orochimaru, Danzo, Itachi, or Kisame, Naruto had been particularly brutal to them because it was nearly impossible to distinguish them. After confirming that their hero was still alive, The alliance members examined Sasuke's corpse. The Uchiha had been injured numerous times on his body as a result of using Naruto's space-time technique. The most obvious ones were the enormous holes in his eyes and chest cavity, where his heart should have been. It appears that Naruto took care to remove Sasuke's Rinnegan and Sharingan eyes, which were the main reasons he posed such a threat to everyone. They searched everywhere, but nobody could figure out where the blonde had hidden those two strong eyes. Perhaps he had simply destroyed them. They'd have to wait for him to wake up to find out. As the war had finally ended, all they could do now was get out of this damn place and return home to their families. Thus came to an end the Fourth Great Shinobi War, in which the combined armies of the 5 great villages engaged Otogakure and its leader, Uchiha Sasuke, as a common foe. Uzumaki Naruto, the war's hero, doubled as the alliance's leader. Naruto put an end to this war by taking on and killing the man who was in charge of it all. Time. Skip, after 6 years. Holding his 6-year-old daughter on his lap, Naruto concluded his story, saying, "And this is how Daddy managed to win against the man with those powerful eyes and put an end to the Shinobi War." The little girl begged her father, "Sugoi Daddy, please tell me another story from your adventures with Mommy." Naruto laughed at this, realizing how hard it was to turn her down. As he was putting his daughter to bed, Naruto said, "I'm sorry Kushina, but it's getting late and your mom doesn't like it when you stay up late." 6 months after the war ended, Kushina was born. Her grandmother was the inspiration for her name, and since the former Jinchuriki was also the connection between Naruto and Natsuki, it seemed fitting to name their daughter after her. The pregnancy of Natsuki was discovered rather late, as the vixen was unaware of such things beforehand. The moment Tsunade and Natsuki broke the news to Naruto, he was the happiest man alive. Following that, they were married because Naruto wanted to wed Natsuki before she gave birth to their unborn child. Sarutobi Hiruzen himself presided over the ceremony, which was held atop the Hokage monument in Konohagakure. Given that Naruto was the most well-known shinobi in the entire world, friends and family traveled from all over the elemental nations to attend the wedding. Of course, the 5 Kage were also present. But when Gaara brought Kuretsuchi as his date for the wedding, Naruto was taken aback, or perhaps he half expected it, since he was the one who made the most fun of them about it. All of Konohagakure was filled with joy for their hero, his companions, the shinobi, and the common people. One individual did not attend the wedding, but even though she grew up and attended the academy with him, she could not be considered a friend. 3 months after the war's conclusion, Haruno Sakura was put to death. This was a shinobi matter, and that decision had been made during an alliance meeting, with all the other Kage present, no matter how much the civilian council protested. The other companions of Sasuke who trailed him without employing the brainwashing method were also given death sentences. Jugo, Suigetsu, and Kimimaro were discovered half dead in the ruins of Omegakure, while Kabuto had been taken prisoner during the siege. Tsunade had lamented the passing of a former daughter whom she had loved dearly. She made the decision to temporarily replace herself with Naruto while she took a brief vacation to collect herself. If he ever hoped to replace her in that role, it was good training for him. She assured the blonde that she would take care of Natsuki's health monitoring during the pregnancy, so this only lasted for a few months. The sound of his home's front door opening startled Naruto out of his reverie. He went downstairs to the living room, leaving his daughter's room behind. His 2 sisters, Konan and Karen, as well as his wife, Uzumaki Natsuki, welcomed him when he arrived. Since Natsuki had been missing her sister Matabi, the 3 of them had been going to Kumogakure. During his wife's vacation, Naruto had asked Konan and Karen to accompany him. Naruto said, "Hello you 3, how was the trip to Kumo?" "It was great, all our friends from there send you their regards." Konan responded. "That damn musician Killer Bee was still annoying as hell." Karen continued. "Everyone's doing fine, especially my sister. I think she is making poor Yugito crazy with her antics each time they switch possession for the body." Natsuki finally cracked a grin. "I'm glad that everyone is fine. You should go see Kushina, she really missed all 3 of you girls. I just put her to bed after telling her a story, but she was far from tired, and if she's anything like me or you, I bet she's still up," Naruto stated to them. Naruto was left alone once more while the 3 Uzumaki women went to see Kushina in her room. Recounting to his daughter how he had ended the war brought back vivid memories of his last encounter with Sasuke, particularly its resolution. Flashback. The last seconds of the battle. He and Sasuke attempted to muster all of their remaining strength because they had both reached their limits in maintaining their respective jutsus. Each of them noticed something by looking around that determined how the fight would turn out. Sasuke realized that everything he had been taught to believe in was false as he stared at the lifeless form of his brother Itachi, who had been the only source of motivation for him to grow stronger in his original timeline. Naruto was forced to make a decision because he had no way of knowing when his jutsu would fail. He had two options. Either he would press on and hope for the best, or he would try to dispel the field and try to escape and fight again another day. Naruto turned to face his friends, who were all watching him from the city walls. Additionally, he saw Natsuki, his reason for living, and realized that he needed to complete this right away for everyone's benefit. The difference in support that they possessed allowed Naruto to phase back just a split second later than Sasuke, and that was what broke the tie. With it, he was able to penetrate his opponent's defenses even further and plant a hand exactly where Sasuke's heart was to unleash a Shinzo Hakai. Even though the Uchiha was attempting to activate a Chidori blindly, he was able to hit Naruto at random and not in a crucial area. When Hirinuru was vanquished, the rain started to fall once more on them. This time, Naruto was standing directly in front of Sasuke, tearing out his heart with a hand, while the Uchiha was barely able to hurt the blonde. Naruto used all of his remaining strength to plug Sasuke's eyes out of his head and launch them into the air so Ryuo could burn them before the Dragon King was also vanquished, despite the agony. The two warriors went down, and darkness descended. Flashback termination. As tomorrow was Tsunade's designated day for him to formally succeed her as the 6th Hokage of Konohagakure, Naruto made the decision to go to bed as well. The meetings of the alliance had continued to be held twice a year during the particularly calm last 6 years. There had been no war since people began to truly understand one another. He was going to fulfill his own dream of becoming the Rokudaime Hokage of Konohagakure and starting a family with his devoted wife and daughter. He had fulfilled Jiraiya's dream.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.